All right. Hey, everybody. I think we are live. Just setting some stuff up here so we could do this. Hope you're all having a good night. Thanks for joining on a Saturday night. I'm so glad you have nowhere else to be right now, just like me. It's been a very long week for me, so I'm glad I could do this. Thank you to Den for showing up. He's helping out with moderation. So if you have any questions or thoughts, leave them in the comments. We're going to get to those between stories here. You can always support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And if you leave a super chat, I mean, it's appreciated. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can between stories. But yeah, we appreciate that. And also, next week, I am not doing a show next week. However, on Friday night, my usual night of doing this, Den and a bunch of others who are regular commenters on this show. They're having a little get together on Discord. And if you're curious about that, look in the comments, the live comments right now. Den will leave the links for so you can join the Discord server and get all the information to do that. It's next Friday. Here we go. It's next Friday, 7 o'clock Central. And Den will post the links in the notes. All right. The link is right here for anyone interested. I don't know, take a screenshot, do whatever it is you got to do, or just click on it in the sidebar here. Okay. The reason I wanted to do this so badly today is I feel there were a couple really, really big stories that came up over the course of the past week, and I want to discuss all of them with you. We're going to talk about the Ten Commandments. We're going to get to the other ones too, but I feel like we got to start out with this story involving a guy named Robert Morris. Okay. And Robert Morris, if you are not familiar, is a megachurch pastor who basically used his reputation as a really popular, a big church pastor to help Donald Trump get elected in 2016. He used the weight of his reputation to make that happen. And that guy just got in big trouble and like stepped down from his church for the worst reasons. And I wanted to talk about that because it says a lot about where conservative Christianity is these days. So let me first start by telling you, if you're not familiar with this guy, Robert Morris, let me tell you who this guy is. All right. And basically, if when Trump in 2015 and 2016 was trying to win over Republicans, one of the ways he was trying to do that is to show them, look, I know I don't have the most impressive resume as a conservative Christian. I'm clearly not one of you, but I have the support of people who are conservative Christians. And that's why my vice presidential pick is Mike Pence. And not only that, I have the actual endorsements of several pastors. Okay. And this is what Robert Morris was used for. This is from Politico back in 2016. Trump said, let me see if I could pull this up here. Here we go. Let me try this one more time. There we go. I know the headline's small, but Trump had an evangelical advisory board. And look at this beginning right here. This is from June of 2016. Michelle Bachmann was on this list, and Trump put together an evangelical executive advisory board. These are the people who are going to guide him through decisions if he got elected in 2016. And you can see in this next paragraph here, who's on the list? You got James Dobson, the evangelical former leader focused on the family. You had Jerry Falwell Jr. back before that was a total punchline. Ralph Reed, a very political Christian as well. But if you go down the list of who's on here, and some of these names may or may not be familiar to all of you, but you got a lot of heavy hitters in the conservative Christian world, some of whom are still backing him today. But on this list, there he is, Robert Morris, senior pastor, Gateway Church. And I think if you went down the list in 2016, some names would stand out. James Dobson, if you follow conservative Christianity, Jerry Falwell Jr., like, even if you didn't know everything about these guys, you knew their names. I think Robert Morris was probably not one of the bigger names on that list outside the evangelical Christian world. But within evangelical Christianity, he has some weight. And that's why Trump put him on the list. A lot of these are white evangelical Christians, though they're not all exclusively white. But Robert Morris was the senior pastor of Gateway Church in Dallas, Texas. Morris has had a history of saying really insane things, just like all evangelical preachers do. But there was a clip. This is from Mother's Day 2016. This is a transcript from what he said back there. This is posted on Warren Throckmorton's old site. He's a guy who's done a lot of investigations into the right wing. But this is Robert Morris speaking many, many years ago. I was getting my hair cut a while back in a specific where I get my hair cut. And there was this lady who I overheard talking about miscarriages and not being able to have a child. And she'd been praying for, I think, 12 or 13 years or something. And I just got so burdened. So I just went over to her and she got up at the same time I got up. And I said, I'm sorry to overhear your conversation, but I'm the pastor of a church. And would you mind if I pray for you? And so I prayed for her right there in the salon. And then she started coming to the church. She got saved. Her family got saved. And her husband and they started coming to small group. And she had a baby. And so basically his whole argument here is this lady was totally infertile until I came along. And then I went ooga booga. And then she had a baby. Jesus works. Like, that's the sort of insanity we are talking about here. And then, of course, when Trump did get elected in 2016 and he had this evangelical advisory board, they would meet with him and they would show up for some reason to do stuff with Trump. Look at this. This is a picture from 2019. It's blurry. I couldn't get a better shot, but this is what someone posted on Twitter. These are the evangelical leaders praying over Trump, who clearly has never been in the middle of an evangelical cuddle puddle before or something. But you can see all these hands on him. I don't know what they're praying about because none of it worked, clearly. But see the guy. Let me see if I can do this here. See this guy right over here? If you could see my mouse cursor, that right there, that's Robert Morris. Not close enough to get in the front row of the camera, but he is part of the group. Like, this guy was still with Trump in 2019. That's how close he was to him. This guy is like in the White House, in the Oval Office, doing stuff. So my point is, this is Robert Morris. He's a Trump ally, a guy who lent his name to get Trump elected, a guy who says crazy evangelical things. He also said, and I'm quoting here, that it is scientifically impossible to be an atheist, which is ridiculous, of course. In 2020, Trump actually did a whole roundtable, so to speak, at Gateway Church in Texas to talk about race relations and the economy, which are two things Donald Trump is horrible at, but he wanted to pretend like he wasn't, and he was in the middle of running for re-election. But they held that at Gateway Church. And I will share this with you. You could see this too. Like, during a roundtable, remarks by President Trump during a roundtable on transition to greatness. And you could see right up front here, this is Trump speaking. I want to thank pastors Robert Morris and another guy. They're great people with a great reputation. And Donald Trump knows great reputations when he sees them. So just bear that in mind. This is Robert Morris. This is a guy who loved Trump. Trump loved him. This is Robert Morris. Okay, so why are we bringing all this up today? Well, it turns out a couple of weeks ago, about a week ago, there is a website called the Wartburg Watch, which does a lot of investigations. They've been they've watched the religious right and the way they're hypocrites and stuff. And they posted this very long post about Gateway Church. And I'm not going to read all of it. There's a lot going on here. But basically, a woman named Cindy Clemishire was coming forward with a really terrible story. Cindy is in her 50s now. But basically, she was saying, and you could see this on the site here, in 1981, her family met Robert Morris. She was 11 years old. At the time, Robert Morris at the time was a very young traveling evangelist. Okay. And on Christmas Day, 1982, look at this. The families got really close. The Morris family came to visit and spend some time there. Cindy, who again was 12, she sat in the back seat of the car with Robert. He asked her to visit him in his room that night. Trigger warning for all the reasons you know where this is going. It's not going to be good, but this is the story that we are finding out. So again, he met this girl when she was 11. She is now 12 in 1982. She's wearing her PJs, and she thought nothing of visiting a family friend in the bedroom. He told her to lie down on her back and touched her stomach. He told her to close her eyes. Then he touched her breasts and felt under her panties. He warned her, never tell anyone about this because it'll ruin everything. She returned to her bedroom and didn't tell her sister what happened. This is what she alleges happened when she was 12 years old. And he continued this, next sentence, until March of 1987. This apparently went on for 5 years. She's underage, obviously, the entire time. And as she gets older, it just keeps getting, I don't want to say worse because it was bad enough to begin with, but it just keeps going. Morris wanted to make out and engage in heavy petting. He reportedly told Debbie, his wife, that he was counseling Cindy. Things changed when she turned 16. He would take her out in his car and attempt to have sexual intercourse. Okay, so again, horrible accusation, horrible story. This is what happened, Cindy says, when she was 12 all the way through when she was like 17. Eventually, she says she told her sister, or she told her friend, I think. She confided in a close friend who knew both families, and that friend was like, you got to tell somebody this. And they do tell. They tell her father. They tell Cindy's father. And look at this. Her father was angry, obviously, called the head pastor of Robert Morris's church at the time to report Morris. He demanded that Morris get out of ministry or he would call the sheriff. And I'll pause right there just to be like, listen, I know that sounds like, I demand you step away from the ministry. Like, no, just call the cops and make them arrest this guy. I do find it kind of courageous, though, that this father who knows this family, who knows Robert Morris is already a big deal, even said anything. I think there is something to that. So don't just, I think my first reaction is that's all he did. He called the church and said, you should make him do something. But honestly, that is kind of a big deal. So whatever. Today I would want them to do a lot more. I don't know how to feel about that. But he tells the ministry, this guy needs to get out or we're calling the sheriff. And Morris reportedly stepped down from ministry for 2 years. Okay. And keep that in mind too. It sounds very disturbing. I'm going to scroll down through this article because this goes on for a while. This is also a disturbing allegation. In 2005, so this is much, much later, like what is that, 20 years after all this happened, she obtained an attorney to file a civil lawsuit because now she's older. Now she realizes she was groomed by this pastor. He sexually assaulted her, assuming her allegations hold up, right? And she obtained an attorney. Robert Morris's attorney responded by implying that they believed it was her fault because she was flirtatious. She was 12 when this started, but she was flirtatious, said the lawyer. She asked for $50,000, which according to the Wartburg Watch author says, I mean, that's not much. They responded that they would give her $25,000 if she signed a non-disclosure agreement. She said no, she refused, so she can now tell her side of the story. So that allegation, that story that Cindy had kept private, or at least within a very small circle, was now public as of, I guess, June 14th when this first went up. And again, these are damning allegations, but they are just allegations. This has not been proven or anything like that. Robert Morris didn't go to court. But man, if this stuff checks out, it looks very, very bad, right? And it's if beyond just the abuse that occurred, which is awful enough. Think about the details that are in this story. Her father, furious, demands the ministry take some sort of action. And then the guy steps away for 2 years. That's it. The fact that Robert Morris's lawyer, who goes unnamed, said this girl was being flirtatious. A 12-year-old girl was being flirtatious. If Robert Morris did this to a 30-year-old woman and said she was being flirtatious, it wouldn't be acceptable what he did. But to say it about a child? What the hell? Like, very, very disturbing stuff. Obviously, no 12-year-old girl can consent to sex with an adult, much less assault, which is what he did, allegedly. But she was not flirting with him. She was not by her own story, not by the version she's telling. And I don't know how Robert Morris gets away with saying that. I did want to show you this as well. Robert Morris actually wrote a book several years ago. Sorry about that. Let me get to... let me show you this. I'm trying to find the right view here. I'm going to make this a little bigger here. Robert Morris wrote a book, and he actually alluded to this time in his life, which is fascinating. He doesn't mention Cindy, but he refers to this time in his life. And look at the top here. In retrospect, it's clear that an enemy called pride had begun to creep into my life. Basically saying I was so awesome as a young evangelist, everyone thought I was kind of cocky about it, and he had a lot of pride. Slowly, stealthily, thoughts of pride began to take up residence in my mind. Thoughts that could not coexist with the proper reverence for a holy God. And he's like, by the time I was 25, which is around the time when he met Cindy, I had become far too accustomed to hearing people tell me how gifted I was. And he's like, God, what do I do? Everyone tells me I'm awesome, but I'm not humble about it at all. What should I do? One day, as I was praying along these lines, I asked the Lord, what can I do about this? Is there anything I could do about how awesome I am right now? His answer didn't exactly thrill me. I sensed him telling me, well, here's a thought. You could step out of the ministry and just take a regular job. Well, I suppose my response didn't exactly thrill him either. I said, yes, that is a thought. Lord, it's a bad thought, but it is a thought. Seriously, though, the religious part of me couldn't imagine that it would be God's will for me to leave the ministry. After all, I was being used so mightily by him. And then look at this. But try as I might, I could not get rid of that thought. It got stronger and stronger until the Lord orchestrated the circumstances for me to step out of ministry. I finally did what the Lord suggested. I stepped out of the ministry and started looking for a job. But I couldn't find one. Okay, and then he finds one. Whatever. The Lord orchestrated the circumstances for him to step out of ministry. Oh, for 2 years. Oh, and it's right around the time that this child's father was like, you need to get this guy out of your ministry or else I'm calling the cops because he sexually assaulted my 12-year-old daughter. But in his memoir, he's like, man, God told me I was too awesome and I just needed to lay low for a bit. Like, in hindsight, knowing what we know now, that passage, holy crap. Okay, so anyway, this girl, now like a woman in her 50s, Cindy, she tells this story to the website, the Wartburg Watch. And again, these are all allegations. It's just one woman's story. Damning as they are, it doesn't mean Robert Morris is guilty, right? So what do? Well, the first thing would be, let's get some statements from Robert Morris. Like, what is this? Here's what the woman said. Do you want to deny this or anything? So Leonardo Blair, who is a reporter for the Christian Post, by the way, not an outlet I necessarily rely on, but Leonardo Blair usually writes about their news coverage stuff, does a fine job. He did reach out to them. And what's amazing here, look at this. Robert Morris did issue a statement to the Christian Post. And it was made public later, but let me show you what he said to the Christian Post here. Here we go. When I was in my early 20s, I was involved in inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady in a home where I was staying. It was kissing and petting and not intercourse, but it was wrong. This behavior happened on several occasions over the next few years. Oh boy. Okay, Let us discuss this because there's a lot to unpack there. So when he was in his early 20s, yes, we've established that. Notice right off the bat, he does not say this woman is lying. Nope. Doesn't say that. He says he was involved in inappropriate sexual behavior with a young lady. Was it inappropriate? I'd say that's downplaying what he did, allegedly, right? But he is admitting, yeah, some stuff happened with this young lady. It was inappropriate. No, it was assault, if it is what she says it was. Inappropriate sexual. And by the way, what's inappropriate sexual behavior for a conservative Christian? Hugging for 4 seconds is inappropriate sexual behavior for evangelical Christians. So, like that phrase right there, inappropriate sexual behavior, what does that mean to a guy like him, knowing he comes from this background that pushes purity culture? So that part is disturbing because there's such a wide range of what that could mean, and he doesn't specify. And obviously, and I know commenters are saying this already, young lady, oh, you were in your early 20s. What was she? Was she 19? Was that a young lady? No, he doesn't say that she was 12. He calls her a young lady. Oh my God. And then he says, it was kissing and petting and not intercourse. Yeah, maybe because she like pushed him off of her when she was 17, but he tried, according to her story. But also, what is he saying? Yeah, I put my mouth on her and I put my hands on her. That is what he is saying. But again, doesn't say she was between 12 and 17 when all this was happening. Okay. And he admits, yeah, it did happen on several occasions over the next few years. So, again, very disturbing statement in reaction to what Cindy was saying. Wait, he's still going. In March of 1987, the situation was brought to light. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure you could see all this. In March of 1987, the situation was brought to light and it was confessed and repented of. Yeah, when she was 17 in 1987, I think something around there. Okay, the situation was brought to light. Yeah, because apparently her daddy told your church to get rid of you. And then he says, don't worry, I confessed and I repented. Yeah, but you didn't talk to a cop about it, did you? I submitted myself to the elders of Shady Grove Church, which is a great band name and literally nothing else, because who cares what you told the old men at your church? And the young lady's father. Oh, he submitted himself to the young lady's father. Yeah, because he threatened you, because he called you up and he's like, get out. They asked me to step out of ministry and receive counseling and freedom ministry. I don't know what freedom ministry is, whatever. Which I did. Since that time, I have walked in purity and accountable in this area. That last sentence is something there. Since I sexually assaulted that little girl, I've been pure ever since. Officer, I only shot and killed 3 people, but I haven't murdered anyone since then. So can't we just call it like forgiveness? Can't you just forgive me for that? Like, wait, back up to since that time. I don't care what you've done since that time. I want to know what you did at that time. And honestly, if you did that thing at the time and you clearly don't have the words, much less the understanding of how bad it was, because he's downplaying it all, why should we believe he's walked in purity ever since? And again, like, if this dude did anything shady with an adult that was consensual, I honestly would not care, but this is not that. He explained, this is the reporter for the Christian Post talking. He explained that he returned to ministry in March of 1989, 2 years after his abuse was exposed, with the blessing of the survivor's father, interesting, and the elders of his church. He further noted that he and his wife met with the survivor and her family in October of 1989. I asked their forgiveness and they graciously forgave me. Well, that's news, because that's not what Cindy said to the Wartburg Watch. But he says, I stepped away for 2 years. I came back. I did my Jesus recovery tour. And then I was back being awesome as a pastor because I was so awesome to begin with. And then he made it back, and everyone loved me again. And I met with the family, and they forgave me too. What does Cindy have to say about that? Kudos to the Christian Post for asking her. What does Cindy say about this? Let's scroll down a little bit here. Where is the part I was looking for? I will find it in a second. Oh, I'll get to what Cindy said in a second here. But here we go. This is the survivor made it clear to the Christian Post that Robert Morris did not get her father's blessing to return to ministry. My father never ever gave his blessing on Robert returning to ministry. Exclamation point. My father told him he's lucky he didn't kill him. I kind of like this father. I'm mortified that Robert Morris is telling the world my dad gave his blessing. Of course, we forgive because we're called to biblically forgive those who sin against us. But that does not mean he's supposed to go on without repercussion, she said, which is a fair point. Like, you're taught to forgive theoretically as evangelical Christians, but that doesn't mean you actually do it. And again, if you're going to forgive, you could say, like, in a universal sense, like, yeah, I forgive you. But, that sort of Christian forgiveness in theory says, I would forgive you, but I also want you to repent and I want you to understand what you've done. But that doesn't mean you get no consequences. You can't just say, I'm sorry, here's a Bible, and act like everything's cool. That's not how it works, even within those circles. Okay? So Robert Morris is lying in his statement. What did Gateway Church say about all this? Elders at Gateway Church told Christian Post in a statement that Morris was transparent with them about his past, and they believe he has been biblically restored to ministry. This is what the church says today. Pastor Robert has been open and forthright about a moral failure he had over 35 years ago when he was in his 20s and prior to him starting our church. Wait, stop. What? Moral failure. Child sexual assault. They're just calling it a moral failure. They're equating it to like eating too much ice cream because that's gluttony and that's a sin. And they're like, yeah, sure, he, took advantage of a child. It was a moral failure. It happens. He told us it happened. We're all cool with it. We gave each other high fives, and then we took the tithe money. He has shared publicly from the pulpit the proper biblical steps he took in his lengthy restoration process, they said. Wow, so he told his church how he recovered and everything. Interesting. And then they add, since the resolution of this 35-year-old matter, like, guys, why are you bringing this up? It happened such a long time ago. There have been no other moral failures. How would they know? Are they keeping eyes on him at all times? How? Like, this is not Mike Johnson Covenant Watch shit. They don't know where this guy is all times. How do they know? Because he didn't tell them about it? Pastor Robert has walked in purity. What is with that language? Like, he said that language. They're saying that language. Like, did they all meet together on a Slack channel and figure out, like, let's all use these words? And he has placed accountability measures and people in his life. The matter has been properly disclosed to church leadership. So, according to the church elders, Robert Morris told them everything that happened a long time ago. They made him go through Christian forgiveness rehab, and now he's been totally fine ever since. Which, honestly, that doesn't make Robert Morris look good. That makes this whole church look really horrible. Like, according to them, he told us that he sexually assaulted a little girl when she was 12. And we said, listen, say 5 Hail Marys and do your thing. I know that's Catholic, not this guy, whatever. Like, they just forgave him and it's all back. They're all good with him now. It makes them look horrible. So this is what happened as this story is taking place. So after the Christian Post publishes this, I just want to repeat, she was not a young lady. She was 12. It was not inappropriate. It was criminal. It was not merely inappropriate. It was criminal. It wasn't kissing and petting, like he said. According to Cindy herself, Morris touched every part of my body and inserted his fingers into me. That is what she said, a direct quote. That's when she was underage. She did not give consent to any of that. And as she said, her father did not give his blessing. Okay. the fact that it happened 35 years ago, it's irrelevant, I think, because it's not like any of this was ever made public. Until Cindy came forward with the story, I would bet good money no one at Gateway Church knew anything about the details about this story, no matter how much Robert Morris says he talked about it, no matter how much he brought up his moral failure. Like, they didn't know about this. Like, and the Catholic Church learned the hard way that people will not forgive you for clergy abuse that occurred decades ago. No, if it happened a long time ago, it's still relevant today. So don't act like the length of time makes it less serious. And no one should just accept that this guy's had no more moral failures ever since, because we already have evidence he's covering up this crime. How do we know he's been pure ever since, right? And if church leadership knew about all this stuff he did, what does it say about them that no one in this congregation was ever told Morris was a child sex predator? I want to show you one other thing, because this came to light after these statements came out. This is an internal Slack channel from the church. And this is what one of their leaders at Gateway Church sent out to the staff. Hi, Gateway staff. Some of you may be aware that a couple of blog posts and internet stories have popped up today about Pastor Robert and Gateway Church regarding something from over 35 years ago. Weird that he doesn't mention any details or give any links. He's just like, guys, they're talking shit about Robert. It happened a while ago. Don't worry about it. I want to provide you with a statement from our elders, which is the same statement I just read you, by the way, and from Pastor Robert, also the same statement, so that, what does he say here? So that you would know the absolute thoroughness and transparency of this situation, and so that you could provide this response and context. We're so transparent that we're not going to give you links or tell you what this is all about. If a congregation member wants to talk further about anything, direct them to your campus pastor. If a media outlet contacts you, please don't talk to them. Do not talk to them. Just talk to this other dude at our church. We have to make sure everyone is on the purity, moral failing, forgiven. We're all on the same playbook here. Here's the statement. Like, what is going on at this church? Jesus, it's horrible. Okay, so like there's no accountability here whatsoever, right? Morris, as of when all of that was happening a few days ago, he was still the senior pastor at Gateway. There was no reason to think he was facing any further punishments from his church, much less criminal charges. There's no reason to think he was ever really punished. I mean, there's a good chance if he was able to, he would just downplay all of this story if he ever talked about it, and that if he did, he would get a warm embrace from his congregation and the people in the pews who he's been lying to for all these years. Because Christians love a forgiveness story, especially it involves their pastor. Like, they will forgive their pastors of anything. And he would have done what so many Christian pastors have done when they commit some sort of serious sin, which is they're like, you guys, I talked to Jesus about it. He forgave me, so all of you should forgive me. Give me your money. Like, this is how they all do the... And then like 2 years later, Robert Morris would write the book about how to overcome sin. And there would be like one page about like how he did something 35 years ago, but here's how he came through it for the next 200 pages. And then he would go on his recovery book tour or whatever. This is how the evangelical world works. So every time there's an incident of sexual assault, that's the playbook. They've done it so often, we know how this would play out. They just have to admit they did something immoral. It happened in the past. They prayed on it. God forgave them. They've been doing great ever since. Rinse, lather, repeat. Okay. There's never any mention of all the people they hurt. There's never details about the exact nature of the immorality. Never any serious consequences. But then this is where it got interesting, because a week ago, right after, like the day after all this stuff really began to hit the fan, Robert Morris was not at church on Saturday, which was weird for him. It wasn't clear at the time if he would be in the pulpit on Sunday. This is a guy who spent years preaching about, sexual ethics and sin and consequences for someone's actions. And all this time he was hiding his own secrets. And then, interestingly enough, this week, I'm sure you saw this on the news, there was a statement, a new one, from the elders at Gateway Church. All right, let me blow this up a little bit. Today, June 18th, the Board of Elders of Gateway Church accepted the resignation of Robert Morris, the senior pastor. Morris resigned. In addition, the board has a law firm. We hired an independent law firm. They're going to investigate the events from 1982 to 1987. Regretfully, when we talked out of our ass to the media on Friday, June 14th, the elders did not have all the facts of the inappropriate relationship between Morris and the victim, including her age at the time and the length of the abuse. Pause for just a second. If they didn't have all the facts, why the hell were they sending out a statement saying, he told us everything, we knew everything, why are you reporters going after this guy? Happened a long time ago, we dealt with it. Like, they gave the whole Trump, this is all fake news, the liberal media, like, that's the game they were playing. And now they're like, yeah, we totally didn't know any of this as of a few days ago. I want to know why they lied to the press then and said they did. Because they seemed to think they knew everything and they acted like it. And then they said we didn't know how old she was. Did they ask? When Robert Morris allegedly came to them a long time ago and confessed to some sort of like morally inappropriate behavior, did anyone in the room, these older white dudes, I'm sure, the elders of the church, did anyone ask him like, oh, moral inappropriateness, like, what did you do? Who was it with? Can we talk to her and find out if this is confirmed, or are they just taking Robert Morris's word for it? No, they just said like, all right, he confessed to something. I guess we'll just take it and run with it. They didn't know she was 12. They didn't know that she was abused for 5 years by this guy. They just stood by him no matter what. What does this tell you about the judgment of a white evangelical church that loves to pass judgment on other people for doing absolutely nothing wrong? Utterly insane. They go on. What else do they say here? They didn't know anything. The elders' prior understanding was that Morris's extramarital relationship, which he had discussed many times throughout the ministry, was with a young lady and not abuse of a 12-year-old child. Oh, so he gave them the same story they told us, and no one asked, like, well, how young was she? Because that would be my first question. Why are you being sketchy about this? Why are you being vague about her age? Even though it occurred many years before Gateway was established, stop blaming our church. As leaders of the church, we regret that we did not have the information we have now. And I just want to point out, why do they have that information now? It's not because Robert Morris told them. It's because the survivors spoke out, and because reporters were like, you got anything to say about this? It's like reporting 101, and that's all it took to apparently get the facts that these elders never got. Then they say, whatever, we're heartbroken and appalled. No one cares. It's too late. The rest of that statement doesn't matter. This is what the church did. But again, the fact that this is the way the elders dealt with it, I believe, if I'm correct, like this weekend, the first weekend that he has resigned, there are going to be protests outside Gateway Church in support of the victim, because she's not getting any support from this church. Imagine how deranged you have to be to still be a member of the congregation of this church. And I'm not saying they knew any of this. Obviously, they didn't know any of this. But now that the story's out, what are they going to do? Are they going to defend Robert Morris? Are they going to defend the elders of the church as leaders they can look up to? Or are they going to say, oh, hell no, I'm not putting up with any of this, and leave? Because that would be the morally correct thing to do. I doubt they're going to do that. I'm sure they're going to lash out against the protesters. I'm sure they're going to say, just forgive the guy. It happened a long time ago. They're going to use the same language because this is what they have been taught to do when a Christian leader does something wrong. You just overlook it, say, I'm sorry, move on with your life. It is infuriating, but that is totally what they're going to do. And listen, by the time you see this on YouTube, if you're watching it on tape delay or something, I'm sure more stuff will come out. Right? We're going to hear more details about this. I hope there's an investigation, but keep in mind, I think the statute of limitations has probably run out, so there's not going to be any criminal prosecutions because no one acted on this 35 years ago, but that doesn't mean an investigation that really is independent cannot take place. I would like to know, forget Robert Morris, screw that guy. I want to know how the church handled this and what the church is going to do in response to this from now on? How are they going to hold their people accountable? Because obviously they don't know how to. How are the white evangelical Christians going to respond to all this? Are they going to accept that maybe our people are sex predators and we should stop harassing drag queens? Guess what? Robert Morris is not a drag queen. What are voters going to do? All of these people were like, you could trust, maybe you can't trust Donald Trump. We don't know him in 2016. But these same people are now saying maybe Trump is not one of us, but he fights for us. And so we, using our reputations as Christian leaders, support him. So if you want the white evangelical vote and you don't trust Donald Trump, at least you could trust us. Where are all those guys now that one of their dudes turns out to be a child sex predator? Normally, imagine if this is like some Democratic politician, some Black Lives Matter activist who was famous enough that this story came out about them. What do you think those people would be saying? And what are they saying about this now? Nothing, because they're all hypocrites. None of this stuff actually matters to them. They just want power. But again, if you're a Republican voter, these are the people you're defending. If you're an evangelical Christian, a white evangelical Christian, because usually Black Protestants are different in a different category here, what are white evangelicals doing? This is a guy you all supported and defended, Robert Morris I'm talking about, for years, and now this comes out. What does that say about all of you for sticking by these people while harassing LGBTQ people who didn't do any of this stuff, but you just inherently assume because of who they are, this is what they do? No, the call's coming from inside the house. I think I'll stop there with this story for now. We'll take questions, but amazing, shocking, infuriating, and you know what? Not at all surprising now that we know the story. I can't believe the father just didn't call the cops and left it as an option. And again, this is what I was getting at, which I agree with you. Why didn't he call the cops? But it may have been very hard. I'm not trying to defend this. I'm just trying to find justification for what might have been going through his mind to out a pastor for something like that. Maybe you don't go to the cops. Maybe you go to the church leaders and make them deal with it. The fact that he even did that is actually more than I thought he would do. And again, our understanding of sexual being a sex predator and how you deal with that and child abuse. I would like to think it's a little better now than it was several decades ago. So maybe he didn't even know that was something you're supposed to go to the cops with. So I don't want to impugn any motive on the guy. I don't know the guy. But yeah, you start to wonder what would they have done if he had called the cops and didn't leave it to the church. Because again, you don't go to the church for moral clarity. You'd never call the church to deal with abuse. The Catholic Church knows you're not supposed to let the cops do it. That's why they want to take care of it internally. The Mormon Church knows you call the sex predator hotline that goes to church lawyers and not like cops. That's why they have it. Jehovah's Witnesses know that. You talk to the elders and not outside authorities. Like they all want to cover up their own stuff while blaming the rest of the world for being immoral. So they all know how the game works. And this father was like, well, I'm going to do what they tell me to do, and I'm going to come to them for accountability, which you never should do because you cannot trust them inherently. They don't deserve it. They haven't earned the trust. A moral failure would be getting drunk off communion wine, not sexually assaulting a child. I agree. Thank you. Yes. The language that they used in their first statements in response to this, appalling. What does biblically restored mean? It means ooga booga, Jesus said everything's cool, everyone else needs to shut up. That's it. I mean, if they want to add some more steps to it, fine, but none of it matters. Biblically restored is a Christian euphemism for don't get the cops involved. We took care of it. Let's just look the other way, sweep it under the rug, move on. What church is this? Baptist? I think it's non-denominational. Gateway Church is one of those non-denominational evangelical mega churches. I don't think they're Southern Baptist affiliated. I don't know. Is this guy still behind Trump? You know what? I don't know if I saw him making explicit statements about it in his like social media feed, which he somehow hasn't posted much recently. I would assume he and his congregation are overwhelmingly in support of Trump and would vote for him because that is the white evangelical way. But as far as I know, Trump hasn't done the same kind of outreach to white evangelicals that he needed to do in 2016, because I think even the Trump people know, yeah, white evangelical Christians do not care about anything Trump does. So we don't need to do outreach to them. It's a waste of our time. They're already in the bag. So I haven't seen a lot of overt outreach, but that doesn't mean the two sides are not together. I mean, Project 2025 is white evangelical Christianity into the government. We're going to talk about the Ten Commandments in Louisiana soon. That's white evangelical Christianity. The two sides are so tied right now that there's no reason to put together an evangelical advisory board because those people are already there. What do you think they're going to do? The moral thing and not vote for Trump? Of course not. They've been immoral for so long that Trump just knows, yeah, I won them over. Like, if you think white evangelical Christianity these days, no one is thinking about Jesus. It's all just a religion of Trump. They worship Trump. That's what they are now. Robert Morris is just an example of that these days. The Bible doesn't really prohibit this. Amen. Hey, yeah, there are plenty of stories of sexual abuse in the Bible as well. No wonder it's their favorite book. Oh, thank you, Karen, for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. Oh, yes, you can all become YouTube members. Thank you. I appreciate that as well. Uh, thank you, Farmer James. I appreciate that. I hope some of you find this stuff useful because, I mean, I know it helps me just going through this bit by bit. And like, I mean, I wrote about this story last week, and even looking through it again today, I'm like, oh my God, this is appalling stuff. And to be able to say it out loud, it really drives home just how disturbing it is. Yeah, if you want my newsletter, please just go there. You could subscribe for free. You'll get it for free. But if you want to subscribe, you can. I appreciate that. Let me close out some of these tabs here so I can get to the next story. Okay, let's talk about, let me set this up here. Let's talk about the Ten Commandments, shall we? At this point, I'm sure you've all seen these headlines. The state of Louisiana has passed a law that will force public school classrooms to put up a copy of the Ten Commandments on the wall. And the bill that was signed into law literally has the wording that they must use. It has rules about how large the display has to be. And here's the thing. I made a whole video about this like a couple of weeks ago when this was going to happen. So I'm not going to regurgitate every single element of it. I'll try to leave a link below if you want to watch that video because I went into the details about the bill. But the end result is Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana, Republican, obviously, has signed this into law this week. And so now it's a question of, well, what's actually going to happen now? Because the law in Louisiana says public school classrooms do have to put up a copy of the King James version of the Ten Commandments. Technically, it's 11 because no one knows how to count because none of them have read a second book in their lives. But okay, the thing I want to talk about, though, is not just that they put it up, because that's disturbing, but I already covered that. It's the way they are defending this bill in the days since the law has passed. Because I actually find it surprising that all the Republicans who signed the bill, supported this bill, fought for this bill, you know, you would think they would have like gotten into a huddle somewhere and said, they would have had the talking points ready to go. Because think about what questions everyone's going to ask about this. Like the Ten Commandments, Republicans. Well, Donald Trump has violated all of them. Does that matter to any of you? You should have a response to that, right? Because that seems like an obvious question. Why do kids need to be told the first four commandments, which have nothing to do with moral teachings? It's like, don't have any other gods before me. Who the hell cares? Why does a kindergartner need to read that? They should have an answer for that. And obviously, isn't this religious indoctrination in the classroom? Right? That's the obvious question. And the answer I would think they would go with is, well, it's not about religious indoctrination. We just want to teach kids about the tradition of the United States and then offer some made up David Barton bullshit about how the Ten Commandments were like all the founding fathers were looking at the Ten Commandments when they wrote the Constitution. And none of that is true, but I imagine they make up a story like that to justify it. But apparently, no, they did not get together. They did not come up with the story because all the things they are saying in interviews is all insane. And I kind of get why, because there is no secular defense of the Ten Commandments law now. And by the way, I'm sure you've also seen this. There is a lawsuit that is in the works, like Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the ACLU, the national group, the ACLU of Louisiana. They are all getting together. They said, hey, just to let you all know, we are going to file a lawsuit. We're just putting the final periods into the complaint, because I think even they know this is totally going to get up to the Supreme Court. So we got to get this right. So they haven't filed it yet, but they said they will. But that's going to happen too. But it's interesting because the Ten Commandments, obviously, it's a religious list that includes only religious items on it. Like everyone wants to say, like, what's wrong with having thou shalt not kill on the wall? Are you against that? But again, a lot of the things on the Ten Commandments are hyper specific and religious in nature. So the Ten Commandments, like, are a religious list. Non-Christians do not subscribe to a lot of those commandments. Like maybe we can all agree, yeah, thou shalt not kill. But guess what? A lot of non-Christians do not agree with some of the other things, like keep Sabbath day holy, don't worship false idol, all that stuff. Like, guess what? Those are not rules in other traditions necessarily. And by the way, plenty of Christians do not subscribe to the very specific KJV version of the Ten Commandments that this law says schools have to put up, including, by the way, Catholics. And in Louisiana, Catholics are like a quarter of the population. So like even Catholics don't subscribe to this brand of the Ten Commandments. So what are we doing here? Like, again, why did they do this? The whole point of the bill was for Christian nationalists to kind of flex their legislative muscles, show everyone in Louisiana who's really in charge there. It's not Jews, it's not Muslims, it's not atheists. And why are they doing it? Because in Louisiana, Republicans do not care about improving schools, public schools, or improving kids' lives, making kids more educated. They don't care about that stuff. They want to be sued over this so that when they lose in the lower courts, and they will, they can appeal to an appellate court, and they will lose then. And it's going to get up to the Supreme Court, and that's where they want this to go, because they're thinking, if our buddy Clarence and Sam get to see this bill, they're totally going to be on our side. And the one thing, even if you don't follow all the legal stuff, you should know this. In 1980, there was a case decided. It's called Stone v. Graham. This is the only one you got to know. And it's Wikipedia, but it's a nice summary. Stone v. Graham, what this law that they were suing about was a Kentucky law that said, let's put up the Ten Commandments in public school classrooms. It was the exact same thing. It required a posting of the Ten Commandments on the wall of each public classroom in the state. And the court ruled that because they were being placed in public classrooms, they were in violation of the First Amendment. And so that was in 1980. And so, obviously, that's why everyone's saying, well, then this Louisiana bill is clearly illegal, not just on principle, but like literally, we went to the Supreme Court about this in 1980. They said it was illegal. And Louisiana Republicans are like, yeah, but our buddies were not on the court then, and this court loves us. So that's the game here. This is the long-term game they are playing in Louisiana. The Republicans in Texas tried to do this, and they ran out of time. I think the Texas State House did not pass that bill. They didn't get around to it, whether for strategic reasons or otherwise. But even Texas Republicans are like, damn it, Louisiana beat us. I think Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, was like, we're totally going to do this next time around. Good for you, Louisiana, but we're going to be next. So this is what they're trying to do. And I do also want to show you this, and I know I covered this last time. This is the version of the Ten Commandments that will be on classroom walls. This is the bill that Jeff Landry signed in Louisiana. Like, it is a very specific wording. It's not just a paraphrase of the Ten Commandments. It is a very specific wording. Look at that top line there. I am the Lord, all caps. Don't you dare put Lord in lowercase, you heathens. And if you count all these out, There are more than 10. They don't know how to count. These are Louisiana Republicans. Gotta love the last one. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Got that, Robert Morris? So this is what they passed in Louisiana. I want to point you to just a few of the ways the defenders of this bill have talked about it. I'm going to play a lot of video clips here. We're going to see how this goes because I've never done it this way before. But first, let me show you this. The lady who was the primary sponsor of the bill, her name is Dodie Horton. This is what she told Politico, or she just said a long time ago when she introduced this bill. They said, I mean, it's kind of pro-Christian, isn't it? She said, I'm not concerned with an atheist. I'm not concerned with a Muslim, she said when asked about teachers who might not subscribe to the Ten Commandments. I'm concerned with our children looking and seeing what God's law is, which is a weird way of saying Christianity matters, that we live in a theocracy. This is the game. So like even she wasn't trying to come up with a secular argument. She just said, I don't care about atheists or Muslims or Jews. All that matters is Jesus. And it's my version of Jesus, not like what Catholics believe or anything like that. So like she was bad at defending her own bill. And I want to show you this too. Jeff Landry, the governor, when he signed this bill, he also talked not about the secular tradition or history, which would be bullshit, but like that's what I expected he would say. He brought up religion too. And I'm going to play you this clip, and I just want you to make note of whoops. Let me try this one more time here. I'm going to try to do this in the corner Daily Show style. Pay special attention to the little girl standing from our perspective to his right. All right? But listen to the language Jeff Landry is using here.
The display of the Ten Commandments in every classroom in public, elementary, secondary, and post-education schools in the state of Louisiana.
And he'll get to the expectation now.
Because if you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses. All right. That's right. He got his commandments from God. All right.
He's doing this in the name of child safety as a girl faints behind him and he doesn't care. Like, oh my God. What sort of story is that? But if you heard what she's okay, by the way. The story he was telling there is you can't, if you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses. First of all, no, because people who don't subscribe to the Moses story can respect the rule of law. And you know who doesn't respect the rule of law? The Republican Party's leader. He's a convicted felon. He's a sex predator himself. We just did a whole story about a pastor who supported him who turned out to also be a sex predator. You know what I mean? So this idea that to respect the rule of law, you got to believe in Moses and that story, that's BS. But also, like the original lawgiver, Moses was not the first dude to think of laws. Hammurabi's Code. How about that? That was a set of laws that came before Moses came around. Like, what are these people are utterly ignorant. Okay, but that's not even the guy I want to talk about. Okay. And I'll give you one more thing. Atheists. I know there's nuance to this. If you look at the federal prison system, atheists are like 4 to 5% of the population, and people who don't subscribe to organized religion are like 30% of the population. But atheists are like 4 to 5% of the population. But in the federal prison system, atheists are 0.1% of the prison system. And I know that's not a perfect example of like morality. Prison is more nuanced than that. But I'm just saying, don't pretend like you need to believe in God to be good. That's ridiculous. Okay. But I want to talk about this one other woman, because the lady they keep sending to do interviews about this bill is one of the other co-sponsors of the bill. And her name is Lauren Ventrella. She is a state representative from Louisiana. And for some reason, she's the lady who keeps getting invited, or maybe inviting herself, to talk about this. And I think she's like the JV squad leader. Like, she's not your first line of defense you want talking about this bill. But she clearly wants to be Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and like a mix of them. So she goes on TV, does her hair, and then goes on TV and says really dumb things. And I want to play you this clip from CNN. I don't want the video to like go down because I'm doing it. So I'm going to try to show you these little clips about it. But I want to go through so many things she said. So the CNN anchor you're going to see is Boris Sanchez. Yeah, that's the CNN host. And this is Lauren Ventrella. And Boris Sanchez does a nice job of asking her very basic questions about the principle of putting the Ten Commandments in public schools. This is from Friday afternoon. You could even see the timestamp when I show you this video. But here's the first question he's going to ask. What happens if a public school teacher like doesn't want to put up the Ten Commandments? Because it's a law now. They have to. But what if they don't? Let's see this one.
Specify what kind of penalty teachers like that will face?
There's not any penalty under the law. It's just a requirement that the classrooms should post what we know and believe is the moral fabric, the moral fiber of our country.
So there's no penalty, but they have to do it. But if they don't, too bad they do. I don't understand the logic here. Like, I don't know. Should teachers just do like a malicious compliance thing here? I mean, I saw this. This is not my idea, but someone posted this online. There's nothing in the rule book that says you can't take a display of the Ten Commandments and put it with the text facing the wall. Technically, the display is in the classroom, and it's the poster they wanted. Nothing says you have to make it face outward. And as I mentioned in the previous video about the Ten Commandments thing, it didn't say the English, it didn't say it has to necessarily be in the English language. It didn't say you can't make certain words stand out from the other ones, like adultery. Like, so she doesn't even know her own bill because there's no penalty in there. Here's the next thing he wants to ask Sanchez from CNN. Like, basically, how do you justify this bill? Let me play the clip and we could talk about it after.
About this bill. And what's important to remember about this country is that whether we like it or not, Moses is in the Supreme Court of the United States. The Ten Commandments are in the Supreme Court of the United States. Moses is on the law in Congress. This is part and ingrained in our nation. This is a historical document that's important in Louisiana because in Louisiana, we believe in faith, family, and freedom. And that is why I voted in favor of this bill.
Okay, so Moses is in the Supreme Court. Here's what she's referring to here. Let me see if I can make this work. No, go away. I don't want you. Let me try this one more time here. Here we go. This is the frieze on one of the Supreme Court walls because they have a whole bunch of famous lawgivers etched in, like carved into the stone there. And yeah, they include Hammurabi. And yeah, they include Moses. And they include a lot of other, historical figures, fictional figures, whatever. That's what she's referring to. But clearly, in that Supreme Court display, it's not a good analogy because Moses is not singled out. He is one of many lawgivers in that etching. But the Ten Commandments bill in Louisiana says, no, you're putting up the Christian display, and it didn't say you have to put up other displays as well. So it's not a fair analogy. So she's saying like, well, we're just doing what the Supreme Court did. No, you're not. You're literally lying about it because your bill only included the King James version of the Ten Commandments. Like, the comparison fails. Okay, what about the fact that our Constitution is secular? Does she say anything about that?
Sure, but do you also recognize that the Constitution of this country, its founding document, doesn't include the word God or Jesus or Christianity? And that's for a reason, because the founding fathers founded this country as a secular one. You don't
Boris,
see that?
I bet you I bet you CNN pays you a lot of money, and I bet you got a bunch
What
of
does
dollar
this have
bills
to
in
do
that
with the
wallet.
network that I work for or what I'm getting paid? Don't make this about that. Answer the question.
I bet CNN pays you a lot of money. Is her response to, isn't our Constitution secular? Like what does, let's say hypothetically CNN paid one of their staff members, which I know, crazy thought. What does that have to do with the answer? He could still ask the question. Guess what? Fox News anchors also get paid. Doesn't matter. So again, she didn't answer the question. She dodged it and asked about something totally different to change the subject because she doesn't know how to answer the question. This is the one that really surprised me because then she knew she sounded smart in her head and she offered a different justification for why the Ten Commandments bill is okay.
This is a very valuable document. Look, this nation has gotten out of hand with crime, with the bad negative things that are going on. Why is it so preposterous that we would want our students to have the option to have some good principles instilled in them? If they don't hear it at home, let them read it in the classroom.
That's not the clip I wanted to play, but just to get to that point, the Ten Commandments isn't a list of good principles. It's a list of religious rules that includes a couple of very generic moral teachings. Okay, like teaching people not to kill. Okay, fine, put that one up in the classroom. Telling people to keep the Sabbath day holy. Stupid, pointless. Why are we wasting our time? Right? You don't need to do that at all. So that's the problem with that. Let me see if the next clip is the one I wanted to play for you.
To the parents of students or even teachers who don't share your religious views.
Don't look at it.
Don't look at it. That's it.
What would you say if your child
sorry
had
about that. I'm going to come back to that in a second. We'll come back to that. That idea that what would you say to the parents about this stuff? Don't look at it. Ignore it. Which is a hell of a thing to say because Republicans refuse to do that when it comes to things they don't like pride flags, library books they don't know how to read, same-sex marriages, healthcare, abortion pills. Like they have an inability to just not look at it. They inject themselves into everyone else's business all the time. It's the only thing they enjoy doing. But as soon as they shove their religion into everyone else's faces, apparently all the rest of us are just told to look away, right? This is the clip, I think. This is the clip I wanted to show you where she really offered what she thought was a slam dunk argument. Let's see if this one works here.
God we trust. Well, make it about me. I got a dollar bill in my wallet. In God we trust is written on that dollar. It is not forcing anybody to believe one viewpoint. It's merely posting a historical reference on the wall for students to read and interpret it if they choose.
She's got a dollar bill in her wallet somewhere, and it says, "In God we trust." Obviously, I know all of you know this, but clearly she does not. The "In God we trust" was placed on paper money in the 1950s, just like "Under God" was placed in the Pledge of Allegiance in the 1950s. Why? Because people thought, like, we got to fight the godless communists, so let's just inject God into the public sphere any way we can do it. So, like, it's not like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson was like, you know what we need to put on paper money. No, that's not what happened. But even beyond that, to say like, well, we have "In God we trust" on the money, "In God we trust" is generically religious. It's not promoting a specific religion, right? Like it's also a political slogan. She took a political stunt from the 1950s and acts like that justifies some sort of historical argument for why we're allowed to put the commandments on the walls, which no, that's not at all the case. Okay. Here is a different thing she also said. This, I think, is another one of those, how do you not have an answer to this? Because she didn't. Let me see if this works here.
I do have to point out and ask you about the fact that religious scholars don't even agree who wrote the Ten Commandments, where or when they were written. Does that not give you pause in any way that this comes from a religious document and not from something that's based in secular agreement or in a doctrine that a group of people have come to accept something like the Constitution?
Look, religious scholars may not agree, but I'm going to tell you right now, Louisiana in both houses agreed, and we passed this legislation.
Right, because Louisiana's legislature is full of Republican Christian nationalists, and the smart people who studied this stuff, their opinions do not matter to the Christian nationalists who passed the bill. Like, she's proving why this is a political stunt because she doesn't care about what smart people have to say about it. Like, she's giving it away. There's one clip I wanted to show you. I don't know if I have
Parents of students or even teachers who don't share.
I showed you that one already. Let me see if this is the one I wanted to
What
play.
should a teacher tell a kindergartner who asks what adultery is?
Well, the teacher should be able to have an appropriate response, which is to tell them, look, guys, this is a historical document that's posted on the wall to remind everyone of good morals, good principles. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not lie. These are important things.
The question was, what do you say to a kindergartner who's like, what's adultery? And she doesn't answer that question because, again, it's okay for Christians to make kindergartners have to question adultery, which implies it's okay to teach a kindergartner about sex. But if you do it in, oh my God, a sex ed class, that's grooming. If you do it through a book where a young child is like exploring their own bodies or something, that's grooming. But a kindergartner looking and saying, teacher, what is adultery? Assuming a kid can read, that's fine. She just changes the subject. Like, it's all well and good in that context. There was one other clip from this I wanted to show you, which is the obvious question of what happens if you put yourself in someone else's shoes.
The parents of students or even teachers who don't share your religious views.
Don't look at it.
Oh, we did do that one. I'm sorry. That's not the one I wanted to play. Let me, I'll come back to that one later if I can find it. But you get the idea here. She's out of her depth. She doesn't know how to answer any of these questions. And kudos to Boris Sanchez of CNN for asking, I wouldn't say like hard-hitting questions, because none of those were that surprising, but asking very basic, very straightforward questions and keeping us cool when she didn't answer any of them. But like, this is what happens when you put an ignorant buffoon on TV who doesn't understand the very bill she helped sponsor. Like, it was humiliating. But the problem with humiliation is that the people who are the least aware of what is happening, who are the least up to the task of explaining themselves, they're also the people who feel so confident that they're right about all this. So she agreed to do another interview that night, also on CNN, but this time with a different anchor. Okay, this time this is with the host Abby Phillip. And again, it became apparent that even though she had several hours between the two interviews, she did no further research on the matter, because Abby Phillip asked a lot of the same questions and we got none of the answers. No better answer from her. Let me play one clip from here first, and then we'll talk about it.
Trust is on the dollar bill. If I had one right now, I'd show you. In God we trust. There are certain things that resonate with this country, certain things that resonate with this state.
Though In God We Trust was put on the dollar bill in the 50s, the 1950s, not the 1850s or the 1750s, the 1950s. So it's not an original, document of the United States government. That's not a great argument.
Well, it's still on our dollar bill, no matter how you want to look at it. It's still there every day.
Like, I have to wonder, has she used that argument in front of Christian audiences and they all applauded her, so she never knew it was a dumb argument? And now she's using it with someone who actually knows the basics of how In God We Trust got on the dollar bill. And Ventrella is just totally lost altogether. Unbelievable. There was one other thing she said, which again, well, how would you put yourself in someone else's shoes? Let's see how she answers that one.
Your son or daughter had a Jewish or a Muslim teacher who chose to hang one of their own religious texts on a poster in their classroom right next to the Ten Commandments. Would you have a problem with that?
basic question.
Hey, thanks for having me tonight. It's a great night in Louisiana because I know tomorrow morning the 10 Commandments are going to be proudly displayed in the classroom. Look, this bill is not about a Muslim text or any other text. This bill is simply about the 10 Commandments.
Notice she did not answer the question. She's just like, ha, 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 this bill is about my God, so shut up. But also, notice what she said. Tomorrow morning, the 10 Commandments are going to be proudly displayed in classrooms. She hasn't read the bill she sponsored. The bill says teachers don't have to put up these posters until January 1st, 2025. That's in the bill. So, no, tomorrow nothing will happen. Also, it's summer. There's no school tomorrow. So what's going to... Again, when you stick to talking points and you don't have the ability to think through any of it, what the hell is she doing? Nothing. School's not in session, honey. Nothing's going to happen. They did, to her credit, Abby Phillip, the CNN anchor, pressed her on that question again and again, just saying like, well, what if a Muslim teacher wants to put up the 5 pillars of Islam, something like that? And Ventrella just kept talking about like, well, you're asking me a hypothetical, but the bill I passed is about my God. And then she added she is knowledgeable and educated about her bill, which clearly she is not. So anyway, just a whole bunch of... I'm amazed how unable she is to answer basic questions about her own bill. And it all reminded me of one other clip that I really wanted to show you, which I don't know how many of you remember this, but this is what came to mind, especially when she was told, like, that's not a great argument about in God we trust on the dollar bill. And this is just a fun callback. In like 2017, you may recall, Roy Moore was running for Senate from Alabama. He was the Chief Justice for a long time of the Alabama Supreme Court. He was like the right-wing evangelical Christian hero, and he was running in Alabama. There's no way he could lose until it came out that, guess what? Moral of today's show, this Christian turned out to be a child sex predator. And at one point, before we knew all of that stuff, before it came out, Roy Moore's spokesperson, his name was Ted Crockett, he came on CNN, and Roy Moore had said something about how Muslims could not be in Congress. Or maybe it was Ted Crockett. Ted Crockett said Muslims could not be in Congress because you have to swear an oath on the Bible. And Jake Tapper asked him about that because obviously, no, you don't have to swear an oath on the Bible. That may be tradition, but there's no rule that says you have to. And as we've seen in recent years, plenty of people who get elected take oaths on books that are just meaningful to them. But I just want you to look at, if you haven't seen this clip before, because the look on that man's face when he was confronted with that bit of information was glorious. And if you haven't seen it, it's great.
Moore has also said that he doesn't think a Muslim member of Congress should be allowed to be in Congress. Why? Under what provision of the Constitution?
Because you have to swear on the Bible. When you are before, I had to do it. I'm an elected official, 3 terms. I had to swear on a Bible. You have to swear on a Bible to be an elected official in the United States of America. He alleges that a Muslim cannot do that ethically, swearing on the Bible.
You don't actually have to swear on a Christian Bible. You can swear on anything.
Look
really.
at this guy's
reaction. You knew that. You can swear on a Jewish Bible.
Oh, no, I swore on the Bible. I've done it 3 times.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've picked a Bible, but the law is not that you have to swear on a Christian Bible. That is not the law. You don't know that?
Just...
All right, Ted Crockett.
I don't know. I know that Donald Trump did it when we made him president.
Because he's Christian and he picked it. That's what he wanted to. That's what he wanted to swear in on. Ted Crockett with the More campaign. Good luck tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
That guy had no clue what hit him. He just had no argument. He's been saying this forever, and when confronted with the facts, he's just blank stared, deer caught in headlights. Oh, by the way, Lauren Ventrella, the lady who couldn't answer a basic question, I was looking at her bio from her campaign website. Guess what? Guess what her profession is before she got elected? That's not what I want to show you. Let me try that again. Here we go. Look at this. Lauren is a graduate of LSU and received her JD from Southern University, graduating with honors. She's a lawyer. She should know some of this stuff. And I get that, okay, she did like injury law, which is not the same as like the sort of people who are clerking for a Supreme Court. And I'm not trashing that or anything, but this lady went to law school. She should know the First Amendment. That's what you learn on like day one, hour one, I assume. But the fact that she's playing dumb, you have to wonder, is she just playing this role because she wants to be like Marjorie Taylor Greene? Or like, she should know better. She should. She doesn't. Anyway, I'll stop there. None of these people know how to answer any of these questions because the bill is dumb. And they will have a lawsuit over this. But the whole goal, again, you can watch this in 3 years when it's in front of the Supreme Court or something, and the ghost of Clarence Thomas overrules it somehow and says it's okay. But the whole game is Louisiana knows they're going to get sued over this. They know it's going to take a while. They want this to get to the Supreme Court so that the Supreme Court can say, yeah, there's secular justification for putting the 10 Commandments on wherever you want to. On a monument outside like the Capitol in your state, that's fine. Why stop that? That's where this is going. Okay, I'll take questions. This lady would rather watch God's Not Dead 2 than read the Constitution. Thank you for that donation. And yeah, like, if she watched it, honestly, maybe she would learn something, which is not saying much because you shouldn't learn anything from God's Not Dead, any of the series. But yeah, like, again, if you're going to be an elected lawmaker, the least you could do is talk to people who understand the law. And she doesn't know it. And she clearly didn't talk to people who knew anything about it, which should be disturbing. Like, God, I'm not in elected office. But if I were, like, and I wanted to propose a bill, you can bet your ass I would be talking to relevant parties to make sure I'm not saying or doing anything dumb and justifying it. Because what she said was not a slip up. It was calculated, and she just doesn't know it. Why not just put the 10 Commandments in your own home? Ah, Sean, you naive person. These people don't care about private prayer. They don't care about praying silently where no one can see them. It only counts when there's an audience, and it only counts when you're forcing your views. I know you know this, I'm joking, but like, it only counts for these evangelicals when you're forcing your views on other people. They don't care about praying in private. I think it was asked today, like, they asked Ben Carson on TV, like, does Donald Trump have the 10 Commandments posted at Mar-a-Lago or anywhere you've ever seen him, in the White House maybe? If it's that important for people to see every day, you know, has it been in any of these places? And of course, Carson's like, well, no, I haven't seen it in any of them. Because no one cares. Republicans don't care. This is a symbolic thing they want to do to try to shove Christianity into the public square. They don't care about the 10 Commandments. And we know that because, like, everyone they elect violates every single one of them. And they vote for them anyway because none of this matters to them. Their own pastors violate these rules every damn day, and none of them give a shit. They do not care about the 10 Commandments. They're just doing this as for the same reason that high school football coach Joe Kennedy wanted to pray at midfield. It's not because he wants to talk to God. It's not because he cares about God. It's because he's an arrogant showboat who wants to do a public display of Christianity for everybody else, not because any of them give a damn about God. None of them care. It's all about public performance. I know you know that. Americans are obsessed with theocracy. Hey, now, not all of us, just certain ones. Certain horrible people are obsessed with theocracy, and they're all going to vote for Donald Trump. Where are the rest of you? I hope the rest of you have a game plan that only involves voting for Biden and then complaining about Biden, like you should. But Jesus, there's only one viable candidate to vote for. So please vote accordingly so we don't get a theocracy or something close to it. That girl had the spirit on her. She got mad. She was fiery, and she knew nothing. And yet she ran for office because she figured she could get elected, and she did. I hate that the smartest people I know are also the people who would never ever run for office. Mean Thanks, Den. Meanwhile, the people who like should be in public office are like, well, no, I'm working in a lab somewhere. Like, we need you in public office. No penalty, no law. This is a very interesting thing about this Ten Commandments bill. There is no penalty on the books for what happens if a school doesn't comply, if a teacher doesn't comply. What happens if they put up other posters around the Ten Commandments bill? They could put up arrows that say, ignore this. There's nothing stopping them from being maliciously compliant with the law. I hope all these teachers and sensible school districts take them up on that. And let's have a big lesson. Use it as a dartboard for all I care. It doesn't matter. You know, like, you can put up the paper to fulfill the obligations of the law. It doesn't mean you have to take this list seriously, because I'll tell you what, the Republicans who voted for this don't care. And by the way, some Democrats voted for it too. Screw them. But again, it's all the people who voted no on this bill, all Democrats. A lot of laws are paper tigers with no enforcement provision. As a lawyer trying to enforce them, it's frustrating. In this case, I'm glad. That is a very fair point. Yeah, if you can't enforce this law and there is no enforcement provision, all the more reason for very, very clever and courageous students and teachers to take this matter into their own hands. Make it a class project. What can we do with this waste paper that we have to put up on our walls because Republicans said so? Like, again, there's so many ways you could be clever about this. I would love on the first day of school, if nothing has changed in August, like, I want to see pictures of what they are doing to comply with this law that is so not what the Republicans want. Any other questions here? It's intending to have a chilling effect on secular influence on education and culture. It's a flex. Yep. To show non-Christians they have no power in these evangelical communities. I agree. They want to show that Christians run the government, that therefore they run the public schools. None of this helps kids. I mean, that's the bottom line. If these people wanted to help kids, they could, do something about guns in schools. They could make sure kids are getting a strong curriculum that includes, climate change, sex ed, things like that. But no, they're not passing those bills in Louisiana. Louisiana, by the way, I forgot the exact number. They are ranked in like the bottom few percentages in education. They are one of the worst states in the country when it comes to education. No one is moving to Louisiana for like elementary school because they want a great education. You go to school in Louisiana because you have to go to school in Louisiana, or you're this lady who went to law school there. I'm not complaining about the law school, but like, it's not a great state for education. And the people who have the ability to fix that are putting Ten Commandments displays on the wall. They're not doing anything to fix what actually needs to be fixed. Do you believe that some of the southern states are becoming more conservative? Is it possible? I mean, yes, because in red states where they have total dominance of the legislature, in places like Arkansas and Florida, right now anyway, those states are doing whatever they could that is worse than what they've already done. They'll find whatever new culture war battle there is, and then, it's very popular among their circles to just find an outgroup to trash. Like, this year it's been trans people. Before it was gay people. Next time it'll be some other group. They'll always find some group to pick on. And whether it's pushing Christianity or making some group feel excluded, they'll just make life worse for different groups that are not them. That is the hallmark of like Southern state Republicans these days. Thou shalt not kill. So can we talk about how God killed his own son and that was a good thing? No. You see, like, it's okay if it's the good kind of killing. Like, all these Republicans support the death penalty. The lady who sponsored the Ten Commandments bill is a strong advocate for more death penalty. They all love like assault weapons. They're fine with killing. They don't want to stop the killing. But they just don't want you to kill like anything before the age of 0. You're not allowed to do that. After 0, they don't care. And also, they just want it up on the wall. They don't want to live by it. Thank you for the donation. First, they call LGBTQ people groomers, then this, clean your own house before breaking mine. I am right there with you, but this is what they've done for decades now. They pick on groups that are not like them. They are hypocrites within their own house, and none of that ever registers with the people dumb enough to vote for them. The hypocrisy never matters. They'll talk about like Mike Johnson, the quintessential white evangelical dude, is going to bat for Donald Trump, who has, if Joe Biden had the moral record of Donald Trump, Mike Johnson might have a point with all the religious stuff he says, but because it's Donald Trump and it's his party's leader, he kisses the ring and he just says, yeah, of course this guy's great. I love this guy. And then he speaks to Christian audiences to talk about the importance of moral values in our country. These people don't care. They don't care about the hypocrisy. They are not fazed by the hypocrisy. None of it phases them. Thanks, Den. Commandment 30. Like and subscribe. I appreciate that. I realize I have like other stories and I'm not going to get to like any of them, but whatever. I wanted to play something else for you too. Okay. I talked about this last week, but this is a different clip I wanted to show you. Earlier in June at Liberty University, there was a gathering of the National Association of Christian Lawmakers. They held their 2024 National Policy Conference. This is where all the white evangelicals get together and like high five each other and say, guess what crazy ass bill I passed in the state of Louisiana? And then they hand out like draft copies of it to representatives from other states so they can ruin all of their states as well. And then you have lobbyists and lawyers who work for the Christian right saying, you guys, if you do this, we got your back on all of this. So this is the gathering that happened earlier in June. It's one of their main goals, this gathering, is to overturn church-state separation. And importantly, they talked about how they would overturn church-state separation by using the Supreme Court. And they basically told each other, this Supreme Court is on our side. Let's take advantage of it while we can. We got to strike while the iron is hot. And the last video I made about this gathering, I talked about how certain panelists talked about putting chaplains, Christian chaplains, in public schools, and then rejecting the idea that non-Christians could ever be chaplains. You know, they said Satanism is not a religion and Muslims could not be certified as chaplains. And all of that is BS, but that was the last video I made. But there was another panel discussion that took place involving like lawyers for the Christian right. And they talked about how they could use the Supreme Court to undo some of their losses from the past few decades. Okay. So one of the dudes who was speaking in this panel, his name is Matt Krause. He's an attorney with the right-wing group First Liberty. And First Liberty's biggest case in recent memory is the case of Joe Kennedy, the high school football coach who wanted to pray at midfield after games. And Matt Krause and First Liberty, they won that case because it got in front of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court just lied about the facts of the case to justify giving him a victory, right? But Krause, his basic argument to this audience was saying, if the Supreme Court helped us overturn prayer in public schools with that case, we should keep pushing them to see how far the justices will go. For example, he said, we should all put up 10 Commandments monuments outside schools and courthouses like they did in Louisiana. And who cares about a secular context? You don't need to put up other displays and other monuments to show, oh, the 10 Commandments is one of many examples of the law. No. Just put up the 10 Commandments. Let's get this in front of the court. And then they said you should push for Christian-only invocations at government meetings. Forget this open forum thing that they have going on right now. And by the way, you should also have Christian prayers at school board meetings, which currently is not permitted. And I want to show you a clip, several clips from this conversation, because you should hear this from their words and not me trying to summarize their words, okay? So here's one thing that they talked about.
Kennedy case to religious liberties, kind of like the Dobbs case was to the pro-life movement, right? It was a fundamental shift that is very much in favor for us. And so our founder, Kelly Shackelford, said, okay, A lemon test has been used about literally 6,000 times over 50 years to prohibit public displays of religion. What if we started going back and going on offense and saying, no, let's push back and let's start putting these things back up, whether it was the 10 Commandments on schoolhouse walls, whether it was 10 Commandments monuments outside government buildings, prayer out of certain, whether commissioners' courts, school boards, things like that. And so, so many times it seems like we're playing defense and we're reacting to things, but why not go on offense? And why not assert our rights, especially with this opportunity that we've been given that we have not had in half a century? And so
that last part he said there, we haven't had this opportunity in half a century where they have a court that is totally in the bag for their people. He mentioned the lemon test, and I know I'm not a lawyer, but basically the court years ago, they said, here's a test judges can use to decide if something violates church-state separation. Does this law have a secular purpose? Like the Louisiana 10 Commandments bill we just talked about, there's no secular purpose really to that. So you could knock it down and say it's illegal because it violates the lemon test. And the Supreme Court in recent years has said, we're done with the lemon test. It doesn't count anymore. The question we should be asking is there historical context for why we can have a certain thing? So a cross on public property, like a giant Christian cross, if there's an argument to be made that this has been around for 100 years and no one complained about it until now, then why not just leave it up? And that was a case in front of the court, and they said, yeah, we're cool with it. So what this dude is saying is, they're done with the lemon test. And the lemon test has screwed us over so many times in the past several decades. But now let's go on offense because we have new rules in play that benefit us, which is a very disturbing but very accurate thing for him to say. Here's another clip.
We're helping several jurisdictions start planning to put 10 Commandments monuments back on, whether it's state grounds, county grounds, city grounds, whatever that is. And so we think it's a unique opportunity, and we'd love to come alongside each and every one of you in your states if you have something that you want to do, whether at the state level or in your districts at the county level or city level, to restore faith in America. We haven't had this opportunity, like I said, since the 1970s. We want to use it to its fullest advantage while we have that opportunity, and First Liberty be honored to come alongside you and do it. I'm also a speaker with a group called Wall Builders, David Barton, Tim Barton, and so we've been kind of doing a road show for these 10 Commandments bills.
So, again, the fact that he's saying all this stuff out loud, which is to say, like, we're the lawyers, you're the lawmakers, start doing this shit that everyone says you can't do because we'll back you up on it. Doesn't matter if they're going to lose, because the whole point of even getting these laws passed, especially in red states where they can do it, is to get sued and get it in front of the Supreme Court. And they want to take advantage of that while they can. They said, we haven't had this opportunity since the 1970s. Let's take advantage of it while we can. That's very, very disturbing stuff. And I think it's also worth noting, they have learned, conservative Christians have learned, they cannot win in the marketplace of ideas because their ideas suck. And so they're like, guess what? It doesn't matter if our ideas are any good. We have the justices. We've paid them off with all the bribes, right? Like, let's just get this in front of them. And then you don't need popular support. You don't need the public to vote for you. Just pass this bill now. You're in office. Our judges are on the bench. Let's do it. Doesn't matter. And then here's where it got especially disturbing. One lawmaker, a guy from Oregon, his name is E. Werner Reschke. I recently talked about him because he said atheists and Muslims could not be in public office because they don't understand the nature of God. That guy. He was at this meeting, and he had a question for these lawyers who were on the panel. He said, well, why not go even bigger? Why not just bring forced Christian prayer back into public school? And you may think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. The one thing you got to know is in 1963, famously, there was a Supreme Court case because public schools had to read the Lord's Prayer at the beginning of the school day. There was a lawsuit over it called Abington v. Shemp. And in that decision, the Supreme Court said, yeah, you can't force all these kids in public schools to read a very specific Christian prayer. So that's unconstitutional. Kids can still bring the Bible to school if they want to. They could still obviously pray if they want to privately, but you can't force it on them. And Reschke asked this panel, Why don't we try to overturn that rule? Okay, here's what he says. And notice the language also, because he wants to unwind church-state separation.
I'm wondering, is there a way to go back and undo Abington School District versus Shemp from 1963? I think that you can look at that watershed moment, that case decision, and look at America's history from that point on and how we became a secular society and how everything fell from there.
So we're starting to not only get some good rulings, but some good opinions. And these guys can tell you sometimes you get the result that you want, but the opinion isn't that strong. But we're starting to get really strong opinions. And I think now that this court has gone back to the history and tradition test, we can unwind a lot of those things that started in the 40s, went to the 50s, 60s, 70s, that kind of set up this wall of separation that we know it. I think you can, because if you go back and look at the history and tradition of America, those were intertwined, right? You saw that, the Northwest Ordinance. You go back to everything, that education was a part of a Christian religious system. And so I think you can see a light at the end of that tunnel. You just got to get the cases up there. It's got to be the right ones with the right fact patterns. But with this court especially, and with the test that they're promulgating, I absolutely think you can unwind that at some point.
I cannot express enough how important it is to have concerted efforts around the country where you're all running similar bills, so they cannot, using the Alinsky tactic of isolate, polarize, and destroy one individual crazy senator or representative. You've got the whole side of our side of the issue, a diffuse target that they cannot laser in on and zero in on, and it causes them to have to expend resources in a broad swath where we can push things through in one or two states and then advance these majority and historic and traditional positions.
That is truly, truly disturbing. That guy who was speaking at the end there was Richard Mast of Liberty Counsel. That's the Kim Davis group, I believe. But what he was saying at the end is like, yeah, we can. I mean, not only can they go after like the 1963 case that ended forced prayers in public schools, he's saying the key to this is all of you lawmakers need to push the same Christian nationalist bills. The 10 Commandments in Louisiana public schools, do that in every state, because they can't come after all of you, or at very least, we got to like waste the ACLU's money when they file all these lawsuits. This is their plan. Not, we have good ideas, so let's try to get the public on our side. No, because they would lose that battle. They're saying, let's just try to throw shit at the wall everywhere, and somewhere it's gonna stick. That's their game plan. This is what the lawyers for the Christian right are telling the lawmakers for the Christian right. It's so disturbing, and they're bragging about it in the room with each other, telling each other, this is the tactic we're gonna use. Let's get behind this. Like, it's an unwinding. It's not an unwinding of like long-standing precedent, which of course the Supreme Court has been doing. It's an unwinding of the basic principles of the Constitution. They want to undo the First Amendment to cater to their theocratic whims. And again, I hate to say this, I get where they're coming from, because the Supreme Court has rewarded them for these idiotic takes, right? And look, the reason they want to go back to like history and tradition is because if you go back to the time of the founding fathers, of course, Christianity was the only game in town. Not only did we not have religious diversity, at least in the sense of like non-Christian religions, you didn't have any argument. Like there was no science at play. Like they didn't know what evolution was back in the time of the founding fathers. So of course, they made reference to the Lord. So it's to the Christian right's advantage to say, we're not doing this because of religion. We're doing it because of history. See, it's secular because history is very good to Christianity, at least when it comes to the United States, because there was no other people around there at the time, right? And what they're saying is, it's what the founders would have wanted. They could say that about anything they want because the founders didn't know that much about these issues at the time. These people don't give a damn about anyone who's not a Christian. They would never accept a different religion or a non-religion being shoved in their face in the similar way. but apparently they're very eager to use their power to shove their religion on everybody else. That's what Christian nationalism looks like in practice. They know people are not choosing Christianity on their own. Organized religion is becoming less popular every year. So instead of trying to make a case for faith, they're just trying to mandate it through the courts before anyone can really get a chance to fight back. And to what end? You have to wonder about that too. Like, why? What's the point? What do they win if they do this? Like, what's going to get better if any of these laws they're talking about get passed? Nothing. Nothing will get better. Their dream solution would fix none of the problems that exist, many of which they caused through their own other stupid ideas. Like, they want more guns in society. They don't care about climate change. They reject vaccines. They take money out of public schools. And their solution to everything is to ignore the data and just add sprinklings of Jesus to everything. That's never helped. I don't know why it would start now. And the same people, by the way, who complain about like rising anti-Semitism, they want nothing more than to force Jesus upon Jewish students. The same people who claim to love the Constitution and drape themselves in the American flag want to torch the Constitution if it doesn't play to their strengths. And again, I know I say this all the time, but because of apathetic voters who stay home on election day because they don't love Joe Biden, and amoral conservatives who always find a way to justify anti-democratic Republicans, and self-important progressives who are like, well, I'm voting for a third-party candidate because Democrats aren't perfect. Like, that's why the Supreme Court has been handed to people like this. That's how they took over. These Christian supremacists know that if they can just get their pet issues in front of their pet justices, the facts won't matter. The First Amendment won't matter. The outcome is guaranteed because the majority of justices, like them, are more interested in elevating their brand of Christianity than respecting the foundations of this country. Okay, I'm going to pause there if there are any questions here. Supreme Court knocked down Roe v. Wade because it wasn't our history and tradition. And with that justification, how long until they kill gay marriage, women's right to vote? I mean, they are going after Obergefell. They're already doing it. I think Sotomayor issued a dissent this week that basically said they're already setting the stage to let marriage equality return to the states so that red states can say, guess what? Same-sex couples don't have any rights here in our state. So they're on that one already. Women's right to vote. I mean, give it time. Give it time. Amy Coney Barrett will write the decision. We did not become secular. We started secular. That is a fair point. I mean, again, this is what people have said before. The word God does not appear in the Constitution. Religion doesn't appear in the Constitution except with the word no in front of it. And if the word God or Lord is used in the Constitution, it's like it was written in the year of our Lord. Like that was a formality. It's not saying you got to believe in the Lord or anything like that. So yeah, we've always been a secular country. Religious freedom is one of the reasons some of these people wanted to escape from other countries. So like, if we really want to go back to history, you can make a case that it needs to be secular, that we need to respect church-state separation. But when you're listening to David Barton, did you notice that one guy said, I work with wall builders and David Barton and his son? It's like, yeah, that's why you don't know anything, because you just work with the liars. Thank you. Yeah, sign up. Go get the newsletter. I appreciate that. I'm going to jump. Oh, you're going to love this if you don't know about this one yet. Okay, let's talk about this dude for a second. Do you all remember, where is the guy I want here? Nope, I don't want that vision. Let's try that. Nope, I don't like that one either. Where's the version I want? There we go. You all know this dude. That's Joe Kennedy. That's the high school football coach that was like, I got to pray at midfield, even though I'm on the clock as a public high school football coach. And then I know I said this earlier, but First Liberty took his case to the Supreme Court. Neil Gorsuch wrote the opinion that lied about the entire case, and that's why he won. And I just want to, if you can't remember the specifics of the story and the ruling, Neil Gorsuch said, in his opinion, that Joe Kennedy was initially fired for praying on the football field. He was not fired. He quit. he resigned. So that was a lie. Neil Gorsuch said Kennedy's prayers were quiet and personal. They were not. Like, there are pictures in the dissents of these giant midfield spectacles after games, because that's what Joe Kennedy really wanted, attention. Neil Gorsuch said Neil Gorsuch said Kennedy's prayers were not coercive. In fact, there's testimony from the students on the football team like, yeah, we were pressured into joining the group and praying. So Neil Gorsuch lied about the facts of the case and then said he just wanted to pray. It's fine. So we'll give him a victory. That's the real story of Joe Kennedy. Okay. Well, guess what? Now everyone's going to get to see a version of this story because it's turning into a movie. Average Joe. The trailer for this movie, a hagiography of Kennedy's life here, they just released the trailer. Surprisingly, I don't think this is released by PureFlix, but it's the same producers of the movie. And again, before I get to the trailer of this thing, I just want to remind you that after Joe Kennedy won that case in front of the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch said the ruling in his favor was necessary because that was the only way Joe Kennedy could get his job back at Bremerton High School in Washington State. And so after Neil Gorsuch said Joe Kennedy wins, no one actually knew if Kennedy would return to Bremerton High School because we already knew he had moved to Florida years earlier. Was he seriously going to go back to Washington for a part-time? Whoa. I don't know what happened there. Was he really going to return to Washington for a part-time coaching gig when he could have just as easily ridden like the Christian persecution circuit and make bank by like speaking at churches all the time? Like do the Kyle Rittenhouse method and just go church to church. They'll love you. Was he really going to go back? And Kennedy was like, you guys, I totally want to go back. And as soon as the Supreme Court decision came down, he's like, I submitted my paperwork. Everything's going to be fine. And there was a delay. And then finally, that summer, the district said, we got his paperwork. We're working on reinstating him. And then, like last year, he was officially back on the team. And like, it's high school football. They start practices in the summer. They start their games when the school year begins. And after the first game of the season, what was interesting is, well, he finally got what he wanted, right? So after the game, he went to midfield. This is actually the first game of the season for Bremerton. There's Joe Kennedy in blue after the game. He went to midfield. He prayed. And I don't know what he was expecting, but I think in his head, he thought there would be standing ovations everywhere. The crowd would swarm the field, surround him in prayer. And the reality was none of that actually happened. Like, he went there, but it was actually a brief and quiet prayer because no one seemed to care. No one surrounded him. No one really wanted anything to do with this guy because really, what is this guy at midfield doing up here? He is taking attention away from the students who just worked their asses off to get on the varsity football team. And it's their first game of the season. A lot of them are like seniors. This is their final year of playing football. And all the attention is on this guy who doesn't care about the students, who just wants to show up. And the thing is, the media covered this for obvious reasons. This is what he wanted. This is why they fought to the Supreme Court. This is why he wanted the victory. So they covered it. And after that, they're like, well, if this is all he's going to do, we don't really care. There's nothing else to write about anymore. Everyone just seemed exhausted with Joe Kennedy. The last thing they wanted to do was feed his ego like all these Christians were doing. And I think Joe Kennedy realized that because guess what happened like just a day or two after he did that? Here's the headline from the Seattle Times. Praying Bremerton football coach Joe Kennedy quits. Claims retaliation. Look at this. In a resignation letter obtained by the Seattle Times, Kennedy said, "It is apparent that the reinstatement ordered by the Supreme Court will not be fully followed after a series of actions meant to diminish my role and single me out in what I can only believe is retaliation by the school district." Just stop there for a second. What did they do? I just showed you the picture. He went to midfield after the game. No one stopped him. So how did they diminish his role? How did they single him out? How is it retaliation? He didn't offer any specifics. Why? Because the school gave him everything he wanted, but no one cared because this guy's an asshole and not a hero. And he realized that, I think. And so he's like, you can't, I'm not going to stay here. I want to go back to Florida. It's friggin' October in Washington State. Of course he wants to go back to Florida. And you can see this too. He gave no this is the Seattle Times again. He gave no indication of such feelings in an interview last week and declined to go into details Wednesday. I knew it wasn't going to be a picnic, and it wasn't, he said, adding that his role and responsibilities at Friday's game were not what I signed up for. Yeah, buddy, because you're an assistant football coach, so you have a lot of assignments in terms of taking care of the students. That's probably I got to go to the locker room and take care of kids. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up to pray at midfield after games and to have all the cameras on me. And he got so mad when all the coaches are like, dude, get back in the locker room and help these kids. He's like, I didn't sign up for this. So of course he quit because it was never about students. Like everyone who said this guy doesn't care about kids, we were right. He quit. Okay. So by the way, you know what is also funny about that resignation letter? Joe Kennedy posted a copy of a resignation letter on his own website, but it's different from the one the Seattle Times got. This is the one that was posted on Joe Kennedy's website. And I just want to show you, he says a lot of the same stuff. But look here at the bottom. Like, as I've demonstrated, we must make a stand for what we believe. I made a stand, whatever. Look at the last paragraph. His new book, Average Joe, the Coach Kennedy story, is available in October. It tells the in-depth story about his battle. Like, it's an advertisement for his book. Up here, he's like, as a result of this case, we all have more freedom. That should be celebrated and not disrespected. And he's like, why did he resign? He cited multiple reasons for his resignation, including an ailing family member out of state. What's the story here? Did he quit because he had to take care of a family member, or did he quit because the school disrespected him? It's all a lie. None of these people are able to be honest about this stuff. And again, in this press release that is still up on his website, it's just an advertisement for his book. Okay, why do I have to remind you of all that stuff? Because now, this week, years after all this stuff, it's finally time for Joe Kennedy to cash in. Okay? Because nothing he ever did was actually inspirational. But now, I just want to repeat this for a second. He was not an inspirational dude. He's just a coach who used a position that could be inspirational to make it all about himself. And I've said this before, but I am a high school coach myself. I can tell you from experience, it's not always easy. It is a sacrifice. You don't make a lot of money doing it. It takes a lot of time, but you do it because you love the activity and you love the students you work with. You do it because what you get out of it should be more valuable than a paycheck, right? That's what any coach of anything would say, I would think. And when this guy used his platform to advertise his religion, he made it clear he didn't give a damn about the students. And when he returned to coaching, every critic was like, this guy doesn't care about the kids. And then as soon as the game was over and all the media went away, he's like, I quit. No one's paying attention. It's not about me anymore. Like, yeah, you confirmed what we were all saying about you. So his story is one of not religious persecution. It's about his Christian selfishness. And that is why the team that's behind God's Not Dead sees this as like Jesus jackpot. They are now making a movie about his life. And here is look at this. This is on Fathom, which basically it's a company you can pay to get your film in theaters across the country, like a pay-per-view type of event. And look at their description. And I think this is provided by the people behind the movie, not the company. I'm not mad at the company. But read through this. It's amazing. High school football coach Joe Kennedy has always been a fighter. He had no other choice. Abandoned by his mother. Oh my God, I don't care about his biography. After retiring from the Marines, Joe felt led by God to help coach high school football. I'm going to pause for a second. You know why they included this whole bit about his biography? Because if they just focused on him as a high school football coach and what he did there, it would take 2 minutes. But they got to build a 2-hour movie. So they were like, let's talk about his life before he lied to the whole world. So that's where this like, here, let's talk about his childhood and his time in the Marines. Okay. Yep. Joe was fired. No, he wasn't. For praying silently. No, it wasn't silent. By himself. No, he had a crowd around him after the games. Oh my God, these people can't even tell the truth in a description of him for the movie. And I know you're all wondering, what is this movie? Can we see the movie? Well, we'll get to that. I was looking around because I wanted to see like who's behind the movie. And I was waiting for the screenwriter to be Neil Gorsuch, given all the ways they are lying about this. Turns out Neil Gorsuch did not write this movie. But the trailer is amazing because I'm going to summarize some of this for you. It suggests that Kennedy himself wanted this case to go to the Supreme Court. And his wife is like, oh, no, we can't go to the... You want to go to the Supreme Court? And he's like, I can't stop. Not now. Even though it was a conservative legal group that made that decision for him, and even though the Supreme Court is 100% on his side, and they're like, give us this case. We want this case. Like, none of this makes sense. This is like a totally made-up version of his story. Okay, you want to see a clip? I will show you a clip. Let me pull up one of these things. Here is the first version of this clip, or part of it.
You to pray in the locker room.
Do you not see how absurd this is?
Nobody cared for 7 years. Now they do.
I bet you can guess where this is going. I believe they violated your rights.
You're appealing to the Supreme Court.
I can't stop. Not now.
It's been 3 years of our lives turned completely upside down.
I know that's a short clip, but I promise you the rest of the trailer is all fluff and has nothing to do with football. But again, I just want to point you to the fact that in that clip, he's saying he's going to take this to the Supreme Court. Like, that's a courageous thing to do, even though everyone's on the same team. Him, his lawyers, the Supreme Court, they're all on the same side. And his wife is acting like it's a heroic decision, even though there's nothing heroic about it. Ridiculous. And I just want to play you one more clip from this movie because I couldn't get it out of my head. You ever see the movie Scent of a Woman with Al Pacino? And he has this like catchphrase, hoo-ah. Well, here's Joe Kennedy for no reason. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Here we go.
Hoorah.
That's it. I don't know what that is. Is that just a thing he does in the movie? I don't get it. But that's your trailer. Like, this is all how Christian movies work, right? I know that there are movies that are based on true stories and they exaggerate or they omit facts or they highlight certain details for dramatic effect. But Christian movies, they just straight up lie about this stuff because they have to. Because if you told Coach Kennedy's actual story of what happened, it would undercut the narrative they are trying to promote and that they're trying to sell to Christian audiences. So anyway, this film is scheduled to be in theaters starting in October. I don't know how many theaters are going to host it. I don't know how long the theatrical run will be. My guess, since it's a Fathom event, is it'll be in theaters for like a week or two, and they're going to try to get churches to go see it, and then it'll go straight to, on demand on some streaming site somewhere. But like, based on the trailer, I have no reason to think it's a good movie. God's Not Dead is the one exception to that rule where it looks stupid, but it really did sell a lot of tickets. And so did God's Not Dead 2. And then they dropped off precipitously after that. But this one doesn't look good. You can find the trailer online. It looks horrible. And it lies about the very premise of this case. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. What other questions we got here? Why does he want to pray on the field? Why not in the locker room? Well, as we said earlier, conservative Christians only like to pray when everyone else is watching them. They don't want to talk to God. They don't want to pray in private because they know they can't Instagram that shit. They have to do it in public so everyone knows how amazing they are while they are horrible people in their private lives. That's what you learn in church, I assume. Did he expect a warm homecoming after costing the district probably hundreds of thousands to millions in legal costs? Yeah. I 100% think he thought he was going to be a hero, and everyone in that district was so sick of his shit that they're like, fine, just let the dude pray. Let's all focus on the next game we got to play, and let's just be done with this dude. We don't care about him. I don't think he was treated as a hero, and so he quit. Because of course he was going to quit. Because as you know from every movie about a great coach, what happens after things don't go your way? You leave the kids and let them fend for themselves. He wasn't going to stay. He doesn't care about the kids. It's a Marine thing. Really? What? Quitting and running? No, I don't think that's what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying. But yeah, like, I don't know what he thought he was going to get. I think he thought he was going to get a standing ovation, and then he realized everyone hated him. It's like Donald Trump when he goes to like a normie crowd and they're all booing him. Like, he's not used to that because he's so used to putting himself in front of audiences that just tell him he's amazing, that when he's in front of an audience that's not doing that, oh, oorah is a Marine thing. Thank you, Den. Did not know that. It still sounds weird. But yeah, like, they all think they are heroes in their own worlds because they never expose themselves to people who are not. On the other hand, people like me are constantly getting trashed by all of you in the comments, and I subject myself to that all the time. So I know you all hate me, and I'm better off because of it. Okay, I'm going to go, do that instead of seeing the Joe Kennedy movie. I have a couple more. I hope I have time to do it. I hope it's not too late. But I did. Okay, this is a very serious story. I did want to talk about this because this is a serious case. Let me pull this up for a second and close out some of these gazillion other tabs here. Okay. There we go. Let me pull this up. I don't know how many of you saw this story because it was news to me when I heard it, and I didn't see it really covered in the US media. But basically, last year, a young woman named Samantha O'Neill died. And I want to share with you, this is something this is like the obituary about Sam O'Neill. She loved to run. You could just see from above my head here, Sam O'Neill, she was only, what is that, like 30, like 35 years old. She died after heroically facing the challenges of cervical cancer over the past year. She was never defeated. She chose her fate admirably and with courage. She was a runner, vegan, animal rights advocate, writer, incredible person, and friend to so many. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but young woman died of cancer. That awful stuff, right? Really sad story. Okay, so she died last year, but the reason we bring that up is that she went through chemotherapy. She went through radiation, but she knew really quickly that the disease she had was terminal. Like, there was no way she was going to be able to overcome it. And they tried some stuff. It did not work. And it eventually became so overwhelming for her that she was just in constant pain. And not like, oh my God, it hurts. Like, I'm talking insurmountable, overwhelming pain. It was a struggle for her to live. And so she's in Canada. And it turns out in Canada, they have a law that allows medical assistance in dying. And it's been legal there since 2016. And basically, in short, like, you're allowed to end life on your own terms if you pass a series of hurdles. Like, the doctors have to say, yeah, we sign off on this. It has to be like a terminal disease. I'm not an expert on it. But you can't just be like, I'm sad, doctor. I would like to end things. And the doctors say, okay. That's not how it works. It's not like Republicans imagine trans people getting surgeries when they're 17 or something. No, it's like, no, you have to pass a series of hurdles. Doctors have to say, yes, we agreed. Nothing's going to get better for you. So if you want to end life on your terms, surrounded by your loved ones, like, we will help you in that endeavor. And I think that's a moral and ethical thing to do. That's what Canada's Supreme Court found as well. So this thing has been legal, the MAID law, medical assistance in dying. So she wanted to do that. Unfortunately, the hospital that she had been taken to when she began to get in extreme pain, like the closest one to her, and it is a taxpayer-funded hospital because it's Canada and they do things better than those of us in America, in the US, it happened to be a Catholic-run hospital, St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver. And so it's run by a Catholic organization called Providence Healthcare. And of course, the Catholic Church opposes the practice of euthanasia because they would rather see patients suffer forever from incurable diseases than allow them to seek peace on their own terms. Because the Catholic Church does not give a shit about how you feel about anything. They think you're not allowed to decide when you end your life, even if you're dying and even if you are in pain. They get to decide for you. And also, this Catholic hospital said they're not going to allow outside physicians to come to the hospital to help her and her life. Basically, it suggested the hospital itself had the legal right to refuse to provide certain types of care, even though it's a taxpayer-funded hospital. And like in Canada, individual physicians do have conscientious objection rights. But this was the hospital saying, no, you can't do this. We're not going to help you do it. We're not going to allow other people to come into our hospital to help you do it either. You just have to suffer. Okay? So the hospital told her, if you want to get this treatment, the only option you have is you got to go to another hospital. But at that point, she was in so much pain that even transferring to a different hospital was like an act of courage and pain that no one should have to go through. Okay? And according to like her family, it made her final hours unbearable. Okay. I'm going to show you this. This is from an article from the Vancouver Sun, and I know I've covered some of this now. Look at this here. She had a severe pain in her stomach. She landed in the emergency room at St. Paul's. Doctors found a tumor the size of a softball, and O'Neill was diagnosed with stage 4 cervical cancer that was inoperable and terminal. The pain was so debilitating, she began considering medical assistance in dying. And again, all of this, was there anything else in this article I want to show you? I don't think so. So again, at the end of her life, as all of this is happening, where did this go? I swear I had this all set up and now it's gone. I want to look for this thing. I'll just tell you if I can't find it here. It's not popping up here. But basically, her family had to spend the last moments of her life here, watch her in pain. Here we go. Check this out. It's not highlighted, but you could see this right here if you can ignore the ads. O'Neill was in excruciating pain. Her lumbar ribs had fractured, a side effect of the osteoporosis caused by the chemotherapy. She was medicated to unconsciousness before being lifted onto a gurney and driven by ambulance to St. John Hospice. She did not regain consciousness again before she was given the life-ending medication. So she made it to the other hospital, but like she was unconscious, in pain, medicated. The transfer robbed her of her final hours with her parents, siblings, and friends. Her cousin said this: instead of having a goodbye where she could just say goodbye to friends and family, she had to get heavily medicated to withstand the pain of just getting to the appointment. Especially upsetting was when she arrived at the hospice, the gurney barely fit into the room where the procedure was to be performed, leading to an awkward scene of paramedics and nurses pivoting the gurney a fraction at a time. Like, why did they put her through this is one question. And by the way, like, I want to show you this headline as well. In the months, or maybe in the weeks after all this happened, this is interesting. The government officials in there, Providence Health patients will soon get access to medical assistance in dying next to the Catholic hospital. This is how they try to get around the Catholic hospital's things here. And this is the health minister, Adrian Dix. This is in November. I have directed Vancouver Coastal Health to take space, sorry for the ads, newspaper, to take space next to the hospital and establish a clinical space and care setting for like a new clinical space. Let me get rid of that here. This new dedicated clinical space will be established for patients at the hospital to access compassionate and dignified maid services. I know that's a mouthful. What they were saying is that the health minister in Vancouver said, look, this Catholic hospital won't help this patient. So we're going to set up a little second hospital next door to it that's secular where she can get the help she needs. But, it's going to take a while till we can build that. So for now, we're going to have to transport her to the other hospital. Why are you giving taxpayer funding to a Catholic hospital in the first place if they won't do the job they're supposed to do? That solution did not make anything better. I just told you that the last hours of her life, she did not get to spend with her family and friends because she was medicated and drugged up, and she couldn't enjoy her final, what little joy she could have gotten, she didn't get. So the reason I bring all this up is that this week there was news because her parents are now suing after St. Paul's Hospital didn't help. Basically, her family is suing the Catholic hospital, the group that runs the Catholic hospital. There's also suing the British Columbia Health Ministry. They're basically saying that the government allowing a Catholic hospital to block their daughter's ability to access a legal health service is an unjustifiable interference with their rights. And building a new secular hospital next door doesn't resolve the issues. And they said the new space has not been built. If it had been built during Samantha's hospital stay, it would not have made a difference for her case because she still would have had to been placed on a stretcher and moved to the other facility. And that would have caused her even more pain. And they also said that a Catholic hospital telling patients, oh, if you want to access this legal service, you got to go to another hospital. Doing that stigmatizes the patients, they said, because you're being told that what you are requesting is sinful. And so the lawsuit says that the Catholic hospital was interfering with her medical care that is legally safe. And when those two are in conflict, the patient's legal needs have to come before a hospital's religious dogma, right? The government's job is to be neutral, not side with Catholics when they want a patient to remain in pain. And interestingly enough, there is another plaintiff in the lawsuit who is a palliative care doctor who said that she worked at that hospital, and I think she was forced to resign because she wanted to help the patient or something. But she said she's a conscientious participant when it comes to ending someone's life. She says it's her duty to help patients end life on their own terms if they meet the standards. But the hospital won't allow her to practice medicine the way she says it needs to be practiced while she's working for them. And because they're taxpayer funded, she's saying, you're hurting my rights as well. You're interfering with my rights. So the question now is whether a faith-based, taxpayer funded hospital should be exempt from laws that involve patient care. Samantha's parents, Gay and Jim O'Neill, they say Sam suffered because her beliefs did not align with that of a religious group. There was no peace in Sam's passing. It was violent and cruel. And they said, we don't know if we will ever heal from this experience, but we know we owe it to Sam to make sure this never happens to another family. And I'm so sorry they're going through this and having to deal with this on top of losing a daughter. But my God, the courage they have to fight this so no one else has to go through it. And just the appalling cruelty of the Catholic Church and this Catholic hospital for looking at a dying woman who had no options available to her and basically telling her, too bad, so sad, you just have to suffer until you die. Why would anyone say that's okay? I hope the courts side with the family so that this never happens again. I know we've seen this problem in the United States as well, where Catholic hospitals won't perform abortions even to save the life of the mother. Because abortion is evil, but, murdering a woman because she can't get healthcare, that's apparently okay. But, I mean, good luck to this family. I'm going to stop there with this story. If there are any other questions, I'll take them for this one. Oregon has assisted suicide laws, but our only regional hospital is Catholic run. Yeah, I don't know the specifics about it, but this is a problem where separately, you have some states that allow, medical assistance in dying, And you have a lot of places where Catholic ministries are taking over hospitals as a business. And that means they're putting patient care secondary to like religious dogma. And you're losing you're losing regional hospitals that actually want to take care of patients because they don't have the money to keep surviving. They couldn't put her in a chemical coma like burn victims. I don't know the specifics here, but the only option was let her go through whatever it is she was going through or something. I mean, they tried them, but they medicated her, but it wasn't a medication that allowed her to like be with her family. And she had that option for a little while. She could have taken it, but they wouldn't let her. Why does any religious organization decide which procedures can be performed at a government-funded hospital? That's the question. Again, in the US, it's because the religious organizations rule the courts right now. But in Canada, when it comes to healthcare, they are better than we are, but not in this area. Well, they are better than us in this area, but they're not good at it. So again, that's the question. That's why they're allowed to file this lawsuit, because this is a question of why should a religious organization that gets taxpayer funding, why should they be allowed to put their religious dogma in front of what patients and doctors say the patient needs? That the cruel decisions that these nonprofit businesses get to make based on religion is disgusting. Amen. Like, yeah, it is. They're making it based on religion and not based on what patients need or want, not based on what the law says is acceptable. Also disturbing. All right. Go ahead and you could sign up for the newsletter. I got one last story for you. Hopefully this will be a little quicker, but I didn't want this to go away without a chance to tell you about it. I didn't want to end this without a chance. Let me close up. Okay. I'm going to show you. This is also small town paper, but I'm glad someone brought this to my attention. Okay. Happier in a sense. Look at this beautiful scenery. This is an amphitheater in the town of Dillon, Colorado. It is a beautiful amphitheater that is basically owned and operated by the city. And groups, I mean, they put on shows, performances there. You could tell it seems like a really cool place to go, right? They have graduations there. They have free concerts. They have movie nights. And the thing is, over the past several years, that venue has become really, really popular. And outside groups came and said, hey, can we rent out this space because we want to hold an event here? And so local officials have to decide, we didn't realize it would be this popular. We don't have a policy in place when it comes to how to handle outside groups deciding how to use the amphitheater, whether they can use it, things like that. So there's nothing wrong with that. They just realized, well, we need to come up with a policy that addresses how outside groups can use this place. Like, what should the rental costs be? What times are you allowed to use it? What are the specific rules? Normal local government stuff, right? Except there's one twist to this, which is that picture I just showed you. Guess who's standing in the amphitheater right there? That would be a pastor, because for 42 years now, one outside group has been allowed to use the amphitheater without a problem. And they pay rent, but they've been allowed to use this amphitheater, and it's the Dillon Community Church. Now, they have their own building a couple of blocks away, but they're like, well, it's Sunday morning. I mean, where would you rather be on a Sunday morning? Inside some stuffy church or at that amphitheater? And of course, the answer is the amphitheater. So for 42 years now, the church has, I think, paid whatever the rent is. And the city's been like, yeah, you can use it on Sunday morning. We weren't doing anything with the space. The problem is that no other outside group is able to use or even rent the facility. And so earlier this year, this came up as a topic of discussion. Like, maybe it made sense to offer the church access, decades ago. Maybe like no one was using it. No one cared. Maybe that was the case. But now it's a really popular venue. A lot of people want to use it. They need a policy. But of course, if more businesses and let's say a political group wants to use it and other religious organizations want to use it, they need a set of rules they can apply to everyone equally and fairly. Like, so why is one church and only that one church allowed to access this beautiful space when that privilege is not extended to any other group, right? So back in April, local officials knew this was becoming a problem, and they said, we need to do something about this. And check this out. This is from the Summit Daily, which is a local paper. Dillon town manager Nathan Johnson said during a town council work session last Tuesday, April 9th, this is months ago, that the town has allowed the Dillon Community Church to use the amphitheater for services for years, but other groups have also asked to use the venue. As you all know, our Dillon Amphitheater is widely popular. We have a lot of different interest groups that are looking to use the facility. The obstacle we're running into is we're being contacted by other religious affiliations, political groups, corporate businesses, private individuals to use the facility. What are we going to do, right? For concerts or events like town markets, the town says this is what they decided, basically. We can partner or sponsor the event and support it with our paid staff and other help. But with outside groups, including religious groups hoping to use the amphitheater, maybe we should not get involved here, right? Like, because right now the town is sponsoring everything in the amphitheater. So they said, if there are religious groups or outside groups, maybe we should take our hands off of this, which means you need a separate policy. I don't know as a town that we are comfortable being a sponsor or partner of that event, because that might start to cross the lines of political or religious affiliations, even private corporations. Absolutely correct. If a political group says we want to rent the facility, you can't have it as a town-sponsored thing because you know it's going to run into some problems. But if the town just says it's open to rent for any group that follows our rules, and some group rents it, well, at least the town is like, it's not our responsibility. They fairly paid the rental price. They followed our rules. That's true of any rental space, right? So that's the right discussion they needed to be having at the time, okay? So basically, this town said, hey, we have a town lawyer. Can we get the lawyer to do something about this? Because really, they had two options. They could craft a policy that says outside groups can rent the space in a fair way, and they can make sure independently run events are advertised as such, like an open forum. That's fine. Or they could just tell everybody, guess what? The amphitheater cannot be used by any outside groups. They could do that too. And maybe you could say that's bad business. They're not making enough money, whatever. But right now, the amphitheater is owned by the city. So they could just say, well, we're only going to do our events here, and everything that is in the amphitheater, we're putting our stamp of approval on it. And it's just closed. No one can rent this. That would also be legal. So which of those two options was it going to be? So the town attorney, her name is Kathleen Kelly, she says, well, if you had the first option where anyone can use it, you need basically a policy that allows everything to be treated fairly. And so they talked about why you would want to draft such a policy. And later on, she came back and she had actually put together this document. This is the amphitheater use policy. And it's a lot of legalese, but it says things like, what about for ticketed events? You know, the town can have ticketed events. And, you know, if someone wants to come in for a concert, they have to pay $25,000, but the town sponsors that event. They get some of the ticket sales and a merchandise fee, like whatever. I don't know if this is too much, too little, whatever, but all of this is fine. Like the town can do movie nights, concerts, beer festivals, local graduations. The town will cover all of the costs for all of those things, but they get to keep the profits from concession stands, merchandise, all that stuff. She put together this list of what the town could do if, she said, if the town manages all of that. But also you would need a separate policy if anyone could use all of it. And it seems like what they decided was, let's just keep it to ourselves, right? Town-sponsored events, we can either charge tickets and make them pay a price, or we'll run it for free and we'll take up the costs. All that's fine. But that raises an interesting question. What about outside groups that want to use the theater? And what the lawyer said is that our town uses the amphitheater so much, like 5 to 6 days a week, that we really could get away with saying no to everybody, and we would still do fine in terms of finances when it comes to just running everything ourselves. You don't need to rent it out to outside groups. There's no benefit that would come from it. We're fine on our own. And that avoids any legal problems. that avoids any controversy if the wrong people rent it, right? But also, that also puts a stop to all the rising demand because all these outside people want it. Guess what? None of you get to use it. Find some other place to go. That's also fine. So, given the choice between a public forum and keeping it closed, they decided to keep it closed. And all that's fine. But what happens to the church? That was a question that came up because under the policy their lawyer drafted, no outside group could rent the amphitheater, which would shut out the Dillon Community Church. And what Kelly, the lawyer, said is that this helps us avoid any possible Establishment Clause violations, right? This is what she told, let me show you this right here. This is what she told the city. Where did it go? I lost this for a second. I'm going to pull this up really quick. Here we go. Where? Oh my God, come back. There we go. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show you here. Here's what the town attorney, Kathleen Kelly, said. The Establishment Clause essentially says that government cannot support, promote, or become overly intertwined with religious activities. The use of the amphitheater, because it's owned by the town of Dillon, is subject to the Establishment Clause, and that is something I urge you to take into consideration. So she's telling them, just say no to the church. We don't want to get sued for any of this. Dillon Community Church senior pastor Jim Howard noted, the church has been a staple of the town since it was founded. After he was told you can't use the amphitheater anymore, he's like, we are very sad. You know, our church was started in 1912, and we're very sad. We're not attorneys. We just rent it. Yeah, that's nice. This is not anti-Christian what they are doing, but go to your own building. It's fine. You don't get grandfathered in to the amphitheater, right? It doesn't matter. You don't get to use this church. And now check this out. The mayor pro tem, Renee Imamura, said she also is not in favor of the proposed amphitheater policy because now some of these town leaders start fighting back. They're like, what? You're saying no to the church? She believes that the town council can come up with a better solution, even if it means opening the venue to other users as well. Legally, I do want to protect the town, absolutely. But I'd be in favor of opening it up to everyone, although Dillon Community Church should be grandfathered in. They have been using our facility for so many years. Then to pull the rug out from under them, I just do not agree with that. Think about that for a second. So again, they have two choices: open forum or shut it out for outsiders. I said that wrong. Shut it off to outsiders. They have those two options. Lawyers saying shut everyone out. And they're saying maybe we can open it up. But if we go with this option and make sure no one else can access it, let's let the church in. And the lawyer's like, what are you doing? That is not an option I presented you with. And here's the thing. The town leaders could absolutely vote down the close off to outside groups policy. They can go with the open forum. That would be fine. What they cannot do is say, no outside group can rent it except the church. Not an option. And the lawyer is trying to tell them this over and over in so many ways. One person, a town council member, Dana Christensen, said, well, the church should be allowed to use it because the church runs a local food bank. So like they provide a service to the community, so let's help them out. But that's not how it works. Other community organizations also provide a benefit to the community. Like, why aren't they being allowed to let in here? The same town council member said, local groups should be able to get preferential treatment. Again, not how it works. The church's pastor said they should be allowed to do it, like I showed you, for tradition. So all these people are like going crazy. There's only one member of the town council who's like, what are you people doing? This is insane. Hendricks was the lone no vote on Christensen's motion. The motion was, let's ditch what our lawyer said. And Hendricks was like, maybe that's not a good idea. Hendricks said, we shouldn't be opening ourselves up like this. We did not build the amphitheater for God. We built the amphitheater for Summit County. Luck, this is another city council member, who noted he is a lawyer, said, there's a very small chance that if we extend the current situation by 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, there will be legal issues that will expose the town. Let me back up on this. They voted as a town council. Let's not take a vote yet. Let's not do this yet. Let's just push it to the next meeting. And this person is saying, we might be sued, but it's tiny, tiny chance that we'll get sued. And the lawyer's like, what are you doing? You've been fully briefed on the legal advice. It is your decision what you want to do with it from a policy standpoint. I am not here to argue with anyone about the use of the amphitheater. The lawyer's like, what is wrong with all of you? I told you your options. You're not listening to me. And Christensen, the one city town council member who's like fighting the lawyer on this, says, if it's me, I'm paying my attorney to find solutions, not to throw obstacles in the way of what we're trying to accomplish. So I would just like to put on a future agenda that we might review our legal representation. Like, basically, let's get rid of our lawyer. That'll solve our problems. This is how they're handling this situation. So guess what happened this past week? After all of this, after all this stuff happens, I love this headline. The lawyer decided she's out. Dillon town attorney submits resignation after meeting where town council went against her advice regarding amphitheater. They now have 30 days to find a new law firm, or else they may have to cancel meetings altogether. Look at this. They voted. Look at what they did. Not only did they ignore what she said, they voted to allow the church to continue holding Sunday services at the town's amphitheater, which is totally illegal, and now everyone knows it's illegal. FFRF, they chimed in. They should listen to their attorney, allowing a church to make the Dillon Amphitheater its permanent place of business to the exclusion of all other churches, secular community groups, and individuals who wish to use this public facility impermissibly advances religion, which is FFRF speak for you are getting sued very soon. Watch yourselves. And check this out. Hendricks, this is the one dude who was on the right side of this. He's worried that the decision exposes the town to a potential lawsuit. It is a horrible position to put ourselves in purposely. I am not sure how the 5 council members were able to come up with this decision. It does not seem well thought out and in the best interest of Dillon. It bothers me that there are members of the Dillon Community Church on the town council and nobody seems to care. I wish he had gone into detail. I didn't know who those members were. But basically, you have members of the church who are on the city town council saying it's cool for the church to keep using the public amphitheater. Also, no other groups are allowed to use the amphitheater. Let's ignore what our attorney says about how this is illegal. Let's fire the attorney. Then the attorney says, I'm just going to quit because none of you all are listening to me. It's a shit show over there. And they're about to get sued. All because they have this beautiful amphitheater and they can't come up with a fair policy that both gives them what they want and allows the church to keep using it. Just a completely avoidable situation. But when you have a town that is run by these Christian zealots who can't see out of their like Jesus covered glasses, you get dumb policies like this. I don't know where they're going to go with this. I don't know what's going to happen in the weeks ahead. It's probably not going to be good unless they come to their senses and some other lawyer they hire says, you should have listened to the last person. I don't think they're going to do that. Sounds like the crazy people have outnumbered the one sane dude. We'll see. I know that was a long one, you guys. I'm sorry, Den. I kept you up forever. What questions do y'all have about this one? Cool. Listen, thank you for watching. Den is going to run this thing from Discord next week. That link should be in the comments if you want to gather while I'm gone. I will be back in like 2 weeks. It'll be a weird day. It's not going to be for the next couple Fridays because I'm out of the country for a while doing things. I don't know. But thank you so much for joining me here tonight. I appreciate all of you commenting. I think we had a record number of people watching tonight. Yeah, I'm going to be back after July 4th. I'm going to be back after the British elections. I'm going to miss the debates. I'm very sad about this. But as always, you could support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. You can go to friendlyatheist.com to leave, to subscribe to the newsletter. That will still be running over the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much to Den for helping out with everything, as always. And thank you all for watching. Have a good Saturday night, all.